carrying out waves of strikes on a daily and sometimes it seems like an hourly basis. But what's clear, at least at this point, is Israel will keep working its way down that leadership list in terms of targeted killings and assassinations. And the moment Iran names a replacement for Larijani, that person too will be on Israel's list.
With us now, CNN senior military analyst, retired Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, thank you so much for being with us. The news that we are waking up to is Israel is claiming they have killed this man, Ali Larijani, who's the Iranian security chief, maybe the most powerful man in Iran over the last several weeks, maybe even several months. Also, they say they killed this man in charge of the Basij paramilitary force. This is on top, obviously, of already killing this man's father, the late Ayatollah al-Khamenei. This is Moshtaba Khamenei, now the supreme leader. He is said to be injured. So, Admiral, my question to you is, if they keep targeting Israel and effectively eliminating these leaders, what does that do to the stability of the regime, particularly the absence now of Larijani?
Let's park on Larijani for a minute. John, you'll get this reference. He's kind of the Cardinal Richelieu of this rotten theocracy. He's been floating around, manipulating, leading internal dissent. And now he ascended to the top with the killing of Khamenei and the ascension of Khamenei's son, who is probably gravely wounded. So this is a big deal. If killing Khamenei was kind of a 10, I'd say this is an 8.5. It's a big deal. And the character to the right is the leader of the Basij militia, truly dreaded by the people. So point one, this is a big deal, taking these two out. Point two, to your question, somewhere in the headquarters of Mossad and probably over in the Curia, which is the Pentagon of Israel, they have a big board and it's got pictures of all of these folks drilling down way below the 4-star, down to 3-star, 2-star, putting it in military context. They're going to continue to relentlessly go after these people. And point three, and finally, here's the good news. At some point, you may get down to a layer in the rock formation where you can actually have a conversation.
Yeah, and again, both of these guys key in the crackdown of the protests over the last several months there. Maybe this will, if they are both in fact gone, inspire some kind of new uprising on the streets there, although that too carries risks. So I want to shift gears here and ask about the U.S. troop movements. We know that CENTCOM has approved a Marine Expeditionary Force to head toward the Middle East. We believe they're somewhere over here, and they will arrive sometime in the next week or so, maybe a little bit after that. Admiral, what do you think these 2,500 Marines or so will be doing?
I think there are three options kind of floating around out there. The first and most bruited about is the idea of seizing Karg Island. Karg Island is the center of the Iranian oil gas production facility. It's their transshipment point for 90%. You're circling it now. It's well north of the Strait of Hormuz. You know, we're all quite centered on the strait, but the Persian Gulf is huge and a great deal of oil and gas moves it. Up there, Karg Island, that is the heart of the Iranians. And that, believe me, is U.S. Marine Corps 101, seizing islands. Think Iwo Jima, World War II, Okinawa. They're very good at this. It's a relatively small island, John. It's about third the size of Manhattan where you are. I think the Marine Force coming in with complete air superiority and sea control around it would be sufficient to seize and potentially hold the island. That puts at risk the entire Iranian economy. That's basically, because they are really nothing more than a gas station, that puts them at big risk. And then you turn to them and say, how would you like to open the Strait of Hormuz now? That's a pretty reasonable play. So I think that's the key mission for those troops. You could also see them around the Strait of Hormuz, knocking down land facilities that threaten the strait. In an extremis, you can see them going after the uranium, the enriched uranium. Boy, that's a tough mission. I'd bet on Karg Island.
All right, Admiral James Stavridis, thank you so much for helping us understand what these Marines could do when they get there, as obviously the battle and focus is on the Strait of Hormuz and reopening that key waterway. Appreciate it.
feeling that this is all going to turn out fine, and boy, I don't want to be the guy missing it if it happens.
Some have, B of A is a good example, looking back at '08 and looking at periods in which, in that case, the ECB hiked into inflationary pressure, which led to Lehman, as they said, 74 days later. Are you on the lookout for signals of a policy mistake?
Oh, of course. And the policy mistake can also be from inaction as much as it is action. The problem here is the central banks are in a little bit of a bind. As Sarah mentioned, as we saw from the Royal Bank of Australia last night, they raised rates because of the inflationary pressures. Right now, we are on a knife's edge here in terms of inflationary pressures coming through energy prices, while at the same time, we have to worry about a slowing economy. Which way does the Fed go if forced to push? And remember, inflationary expectations tend to be very driven off the pump price of gasoline. And so that had been ebbing for some time, those inflation expectations, thanks to the effect of tariffs not being as bad as people have feared. Now you start to wonder if that's going to kick up again. The Fed is in a really difficult situation in terms of both political pressures, in terms of and I hate to say stagflation, it's a dirty word, but that is a valid consideration.
There's also NVIDIA. We're about to hear from Jensen Huang with our Jim Cramer here, and they put out a forecast for $1 trillion by 2027. Concerns about peak data center spending around 26. I think they put that to rest. Do you have to have a view there? Because a lot of what has been rebounding in the market has been the AI trade.
Well, a couple of things there. I mean, first of all, we have to have a view on AI because it's whether you like it or not. If you're just even an S&P passive investor, you're call it 40% levered to AI. Between NVIDIA and all the hyperscalers and then ancillary companies. So call it 40 to 50% of your investment, even if you're just blindly throwing money in an S&P index fund, is related to this. So you better have a view. You better understand it. I do think there's concerns about the fact that not necessarily for NVIDIA, but in terms of other companies where you've had asset-light models moving to asset-heavy or impingement upon their cash flow, that does disrupt some of the rationale for investing in some of these companies. But they do tend to be predictable earners. And if Jensen Huang, it can meet these forecasts that he's laid out, which he's done a tremendous job of doing, that should ease people's concerns about the AI trade in general, even if they don't necessarily eliminate them completely.
Steve, I want to get your take on various technical levels. People are watching the 200-day around 6,600, the 20-day a little bit north of 6,800. I love the bit that you wrote about Mondays being relatively strong in recent weeks. I guess that's just a relief from coming in on a Monday morning and not having seen everything completely disintegrate over the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a testament sort of to the general optimism. What I pointed out yesterday was 8 out of 9 Mondays this year have been higher. Yes, the average is about call it 35 basis points of a rally. We've had 2 Tuesdays because of holidays; those have been 50. But I do think that looking how we came in Friday, where we just fell out of this malaise and valid concern over what might happen over the weekend. But we didn't quite test the 200-day moving average, but we got it within sniffing distance. And then, when people feel that the worst is behind them, they do tend to rally. Also, we have a quarterly expiration this week, and I know no one really cares about triple witching anymore because of daily expirations. But they do tend to concentrate some volatility, and it's not an unknown feature to see a little bit of a rally ahead of a quarterly expiration. And there's very few outside catalysts where you have the Fed meeting is not expected to be much. So, if you get a slight improvement in the price of oil, you see stocks try to tick higher. And that's what we did this morning. And again, abetted by the desire to not miss a rally and chase one it appears.
Yeah, you're right about running out of catalysts here.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. The magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system, help with brain function, and improve the efficacy of vitamin D3. Also get vitamin C and magnesium. This will help with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. can stack them together, or you can take them separately. But please go to my store, boost up that immune system, and improve your brain function. It's really important. And since magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3, vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor to help your cells to work properly. It also helps to build denser bone. It helps to absorb calcium and do some resistance training, and it'll help to deposit new bone matrix. Vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. And vitamin D3 helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. That's why you should be taking vitamin D3 every day, especially during the cold season. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. It's going to boost up the immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. How does it work? It's really simple. It brings down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. So you're reducing plaque formation, and by bringing down inflammation, you're helping to boost up your immune system. Because if you have high inflammation chronically, your immune system is actually dysregulated. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Another great product that I have that's new is Super Strong Relief. This helps with headaches, tension headaches. You just apply it to your temples and your forehead and your neck muscles. It'll help to relieve the headache. It also helps with joint pain and muscle pain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Super Strong Relief. This works within 30 to about 90 seconds. So please go to my store, have this available in your household. You never know when you need it. And again, it will also help with joint pain and arthritic pain. All righty. Let's listen to Victor Hansen talking about the Iran war.
We're in the second week of the so-called Iran war. There's a very surreal war. I don't think any of us have seen anything like it. It's only been 2 weeks, and we're told that it's dragging on, that it's a forever war, that we're losing, that the Pentagon and the Trump administration have no plans. And yet, when you look at Iran, this huge country, much, much bigger, much, much more populous than Iraq or Afghanistan, and it has no military left. And yet, people say that it's unconquerable. It doesn't make any sense. Its output of missiles and drones at the Gulf petrol states and Israel has dropped by 90%. So what's going on? Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. We're in the second week, just completing it, of the so-called Iran war, this effort of the United States to bomb the theocracy into submission so they will cancel their missile and nuclear programs, and to champion the popular protest on the streets that have some potential to get rid of the regime itself. But it's a very surreal war. I don't think any of us have seen anything like it. It's only been 2 weeks, and we're told that it's dragging on, that it's a forever war, that we're losing, that the Pentagon and the Trump administration have no plans. And yet, when you look at Iran, this huge country, much, much bigger, much, much more populous than Iraq or Afghanistan, and it has no military left. The Navy is dismantled. The Air Force is dismantled. The Republican Guard, all of these special contingents are under enormous assault. The command and control is destroyed. The missile defense is destroyed. And yet people say that it's unconquerable. It doesn't make any sense. Its output of missiles and drones at the Gulf petrol states and Israel has dropped by 90%. So what's going on? And I think part of the problem is that there's no media coverage. There are no embedded reporters because we are not on the ground. When you don't have a ground fight in enemy territory, you don't have American embedded journalists traveling with the troops that can give diverse opinions, accurate accounts. All we have are the journalists who are allowed into Iran, and that happens to be, guess who? CNN. And they report the party line that comes out of the Iranian theocracy. Again, an air war is very hard to cover because pilots can't talk to anybody. They're at bases that are secluded and secure. They get in the planes, they fly their mission, and they go home. And there's no way a journalist can really get to them or talk to them. So all of our information comes from three sources. The Iranian propaganda machine, which is completely not credible. It's about as credible as the Hamas body count that we saw 2 years ago. Or CNN and a few other Western but very biased news outlets that only Iran will let in based on the conditions which they impose on them, and the Israelis. And the only thing you can find out about this war that's official comes from the Israeli government and some Israeli newspapers, the Israeli Times or Israel Times or the Jerusalem Post. So there's a lot of misinformation about the actual damage that we're inflicting. And then there's the attitude toward the war. The attitude. In World War II, everybody was behind the United States. We did a lot of things that we regretted. The Japanese internment. We made a lot of mistakes strategically. Okinawa, Tarawa were disasters. The B-17 bombing program cost $40,000, but everybody's basically said we don't have to be perfect to be good. We're going to win our war because our cause is better than the alternative. That's gone now. It's gone. Even in the first Gulf War of 1990-91, people were united. But the Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of Bill Clinton. It's a socialist party. That's a euphemism. It really does not believe in traditional America. And it believes that if it can convey a sense that America is losing, then two things follow it. For some, it means that the November midterms might give power back to the Democrats, and therefore it's in their self-interest to magnify the debacle, so to speak, or the tragedy, or that we're losing. And then there's others that actually, in the Democratic Party, and I'm talking about the Squad, or they actually are sympathizing with the enemy. If you think I'm crazy, there was a protest out in New York where we had resident aliens, students here on student visa, naturalized citizens. And what were they screaming? Shame on the United States. Why we're at war. And who were they protesting on behalf of? Iran, the Hezbollah people, terrorists, and the Hamas terrorists. And so this is a very bizarre thing. And in addition to that, we've got the element of anti-Semitism where we have the Democratic Party now. Its base is just unavowedly anti-Semitic. And I'll just make a casual observation. I will predict that you will not have a Jewish American presidential candidate, or vice presidential candidate for the foreseeable future. It is impossible to nominate anybody with a Jewish background on a national ticket in the Democratic Party. And you can see that as the Democrats look at this war, they have bought hook, line, and sinker the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu is pulling the strings of the Donald Trump puppet, and tiny Israel is getting into this war, despite the fact that all 7 prior presidents to Trump himself said on the record that Iran would not get a nuclear weapon on its watch, and that they would take measures to ensure that it didn't, and didn't for the future. None of them did that. None of them did that. And so when you look at the first Gulf War, it was 42 days, but only 4 days were on the ground. It was a magnificent victory, but 300 people were killed. We've lost about 13 fatalities. 300, that was considered amazing at the time. And they overran the country, but it took 42 days to disable it. And they left Saddam Hussein in power, and they had to go back. And so that was considered a stellar success. But this is a much more dramatic victory. I mean, we've only been here 2 weeks, and a much more formidable enemy is in shambles. And we're left with just three alternatives. Either the regime is going to be replaced now or in the next few weeks as the people come out of their homes and see what their country is like and what the theocracy caused and what it did to them. Or there's going to be some Venezuelan solution with a strongman will come forward. Or maybe that won't happen at all and the United States under political pressure will stop. But if it stops, they have destroyed the Iranian military and its nuclear and missile program for years. So this was all preferable to the situation pre-war in which Iran still was working on the bomb, still had 3,000 missiles and more drones, and was boasting that it was going to, anytime it wanted, close the Straits of Hormuz. And they've tried it and they will not be successful. Put it all together, this is a surreal war. What is actually happening is not being reported, and there's an alternate reality that's been constructed by the left that sees this war as politically advantageous to its agenda to recapture power in the United States. If it can convince us, the American people, that A, we're losing, B, we may deserve to lose, C, it's all Donald Trump's fault, and this war will be beneficial in denying him the Republican majorities in Congress in about 8 months. Thank you very much. This is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Signal. Please like, share, and subscribe to be notified for more content like this. You can also check out my own website at victorhanson.com and subscribe for exclusive features in addition.
Directly or directly with the US, and he has been conducting these negotiations for his entire career. So it could be a blow to any desire the administration may have to seek some negotiated end to this conflict.
Yeah, very good point. Many thanks, Mike Hanna at the White House there. Now, the Pentagon is sending more warships and troops to the Middle East. That's according to US media reports. The amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli, is now heading to the region along with Marines. It was stationed in Japan. The deployment's meant to reinforce US troops already in the Middle East. The build-up follows a request from US Central Command, or CENTCOM, which oversees American military operations in the region. Journalist Imzaman Rashid reports from the Strait of Hormuz.
We saw, even prior to this conflict starting, a huge buildup of US military assets in this region, and we've seen them in full force as well, particularly from the Gulf, firing into Iran and into Iranian territory. Well, this particular vessel brings along with it around 5,000 or so Marines, and there are some analysts suggesting that this could be used in some form of ground invasion in the Strait of Hormuz. Behind me, I'm just at the very entrance of the Strait of Hormuz, where, of course, there haven't been many ships passing through these waters. But this particular vessel, the USS Tripoli, could be used as some form of ground invasion to take back control of these waters. Donald Trump has suggested trying to build together some form of group of countries that can actually send warships out to these waters to essentially fight here, essentially to gain access of these waters, but also to escort some of these hundreds and hundreds of vessels that are currently anchored down in the area around the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz to actually try and get them through safely. Today, the International Maritime Organization has said that it's very unlikely that there will be a safe operation of escorting ships through. It's also not a sustainable and viable option in the long term, given that they would only essentially be taking a few ships through at each time. So not only could Iran potentially target the USS vessels, the other vessels from different countries, they would also be striking seafarers who have been out there stranded essentially in one place.
James Dorsey is an adjunct senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam.
All right, before we go to another clip, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics. You can get it in veggie cap version or in the powdered version. Both are very high quality, and with a good probiotic, you're going to improve your gut biome improve your metabolism, improve your energy absorption. You'll reduce leaky gut syndrome. You're going to improve the immune system at the gut level. The crypt will be healthier within your colon. The communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain will improve. You'll sleep better. You'll consolidate memory. You'll be able to have more mental clarity. A lot of people don't understand that good gut health does help with brain function. So please go to my store and get the probiotics either in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form. Very high quality. Also, probiotics will help with your skin health. Good gut health will improve your overall health. So please go to my store and take the probiotics every day. In terms of brain function, it's really important to use this stack that I have. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower that will allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep each night. When you do that, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to consolidate memory. You're going to be able to detoxify your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. So please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. Clarity Factor is a very powerful neurostack that's going to allow you to get rid of that brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate on tasks. So you take this every day, drink it with filtered water. It will also help with your memory and the speed of cognition. Over time, what will happen is that your dendritic connections will improve. You're going to have positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think faster. So please go to my store, get the Clarity Factor. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Okay, with that, let's continue on with. Let's listen in on Karg Island means to Iraq, actually.
Economist and Steve Moore, host of More Money, WABC Radio. Gentlemen, welcome. Dan Briette, I just want to stay with Karg Island. We talked a little bit with Aaron Cohn about it. But the pipes, how much of Iran's oil goes through the pipes? How much of it goes through the waterway of the Strait of Hormuz? I don't know if anyone's really focused on Karg Island until the last weekend when it got slammed by Allied bombing.
Yeah, great to be back with you, Larry. I really appreciate the conversation, the opportunity. I learn from you every single day. But look, I think people need to understand what Karg Island means to the country of Iraq. Roughly 90% of their oil that hits the water comes through that one island. It's an island in the northern part of the Persian Gulf. And the easiest way to understand it is Karg Island is to Iran what the Strait of Hormuz is to the rest of the world. It's a choke point. It's probably even more than a choke point, Larry. I would refer to it as a kill switch. If you take out Karg Island, you've taken out 90% of the revenue that goes to Iran. So that's a very important point. I think the president understands that very, very well, which is why he's done what he's done. I think he has sent them a very, very loud signal. It's a warning shot, a shot across the bow, whatever you want to call it. But he has sent them a very loud signal. If you don't come to the table, you don't negotiate, this thing is going to be really at risk. And I think what he is trying to provide them is an off-ramp, perhaps, to this conflict in the region. So we'll see if they take it or not, but I think that's what he's trying to do here.
I don't know if you know Karg Island or any of the geopolitics here. Of course, if you knock out Iran, you'd also, the oil markets would take a hit. Prices might jump up again. That doesn't bother me as much as it bothers some people because I think the mission is much better. And I think Americans understand that. Americans know that the mission is more important than some temporary jump in oil prices. So how do you see this thing?
I think it's exactly correct, Larry, on that. The mission is it. We got to win. We've got to do it correctly. Don't rush the job. Get it done right. Get it done completely. And then we've got it. We came in here to get Iran out of the picture as a terrorist nation sponsoring all sorts of horrible things in the world. We need to stop them from doing that. That will be an enormous plus for the world. I hope the rest of the countries that we're serving chip in and help us with this. I mean, you know, I don't know the oil thing, but a year from now, oil's not going to be a problem. The more we talk about oil, the more we're just chasing a shiny object. That shiny object should not be chased. Just get the job done in Iran. Once that's done, I think the economy will be back on track. We've got everything set for an expansive, a great expansion of this U.S. economy, and I'm very pleased. And we need to get Kevin Warsh in there and get those interest rate stability to prices, and we're off to the races.
By the way, Steve Moore, an interesting point. Manufacturing came in pretty strong today. In fact, manufacturing has been strong from the industrial production numbers, especially business equipment. That may seem like small beer with the grand scheme of the war, but nonetheless, there's a lot of tailwinds and incentives behind the Trump boom, which I don't think are just because we had a little bump up in energy prices is going to stall out. So I want to get your take on that. And do we, you know, at the same time, what about the NATOs? The NATO allies, I'm calling them allies, I guess they're allies. Do we, you know, I mean, the president would like to have them on board. It seems more political. I mean, so fine. Bring in the NATO allies. We don't need them. We don't need them at all. I mean, they're not going to do anything militarily. I don't know. They have some strategic reserve. I mean, really, NATO? Come on. NATO should copy the Trump economic policy so they can get their manufacturing going again. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, isn't that the case? And by the way, that manufacturing boom you're talking about, the purchases of equipment and machinery, that's a direct result of the Trump tax cut, which gave the immediate expensing for those kinds of capital investments. And no surprise we're seeing a boom. But I like Donald Trump, are just disgusted with the Europeans at this point. I mean, my goodness, it's in their own interest, Larry, to get the rates of Hormuz open. They're paying high gas prices too. And I don't understand it. And this is not what an ally does, especially when it's in their own interest to make sure that this free flow of oil. I'm with Arthur. And by the way, Arthur, the futures markets are saying exactly what you're saying. That 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months from now, we're going to be back to $50 to $60 barrels of oil. That's what the market is telling us, and it can't happen soon enough.
Yeah, people should have a little bit of patience. Dan Brea, you know, the futures market, there's a wisdom in the futures market. It's usually right, not always right. I just wanted to know, when you tally up the barrels of oil, okay, the Saudis are moving through their east to west pipeline. The beneficence of Mr. Trump is to allow the Iranian Karg Island pipeline to, so far it's intact, okay, but you're saying that is the basis of most of their oil. We are, however, at the same time, letting them transit some of their Iranian oil through the Strait of Hormuz, which I see as, again, Aaron Cohen would call it psychological warfare. You know, the door is open, maybe some discussions. Is that possible? I mean, how much of this goes through the Strait of Hormuz and how much of it doesn't?
Well, it's roughly 2 million barrels a day, give or take. It's what they're taking out of the island and putting one through the straits. But they're not doing that today. I guess it's down, much more than that. But on average, it's 1.5 to 2 million barrels a day. And I think, Larry, when you think about what that means in terms of the world supply, look, we produce roughly 105, 106 million barrels a day. We consume about 104, 105. If we took all of that off the market, all 1.5 million barrels, all 2 million barrels, whatever that number is today, we might see a small spike in prices, but it's going to be because of the war. It's going to be because of the risk premium that's associated with going in that particular area. It is not going to be because we've lost that oil in the marketplace. It's not going to be a supply shock, I should say. So I don't think that the impact is going to be all that great. That's why I think about this in longer term blocks of time. I think as we look at that futures market, as you mentioned earlier, it does show that the prices are going to come down, and quite dramatically. And I think all of these little things that we're looking at in the marketplace today are simple bumps in the road. They go away, though, really, really quickly if this conflict comes to an end. And that's why I think the president struck that island. He's giving them an off-ramp. He's giving them an opportunity to come to the table. If they don't come to the table and he does take it all out, again, we're going to see a short blip. It's going to come right back down.
Yeah, well, they maybe, continue their stupidity and not take it, then the president has made his position very clear, what he's going to do to them. Art Lafford, it just, again, seems like small beer. In fact, you know what? We'll save Kevin Warsh for another day. We'll save Kevin Warsh and Jeanine Pirro and the Justice Department and Senator Tom Tillis and all that stuff for another day, because we really would like to have Kevin Warsh running the Federal Reserve as soon as possible. I see Steve. I don't know. We don't have enough time to do it justice. But we'll have a movement, and we'll have another segment on the whole thing. Steve Moore, congratulations. 65 areas require a photo ID. The only one that doesn't is voting. It was in our riff. It was in our riff. It was in your outline, and it was totally fabulous. Dan Buriette, you probably don't know what we're talking about, but it's great fun having you on board. Art Lafford, wonderful to see you. Steve Moore, thanks ever so much.
You want a vehicle, Dad?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. Lignans helps the immune system and the endocrine system, brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. Lignans will help with the cardiovascular health and also brain function. By bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. By bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you're improving the health of your neurons. Also, ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and blood glucose levels. This helps with the cardiovascular health, also brain function, and your immune system. You can stack them together for added benefit. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Also, get the structural nano silver gel. You can get it in a tube form or in a quick dispenser form. Have it at home and at work. You never know when you need it. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, apply it on the lesion. It will help to heal it about a third of the time quicker. In addition, you can use it as a daily skincare to help to improve your skin. And the structural nanosilver will neutralize, that's really important, if it's during the cold season and you're sick or someone around you sick, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. So please go to my store, get the structural nano silver gels that I offer. Very high quality. All right, let's see here. What else is transpiring in the news? Let's listen into Bloomberg.
Got us into this. All I will say is now that we're in it, I'm all vested for the United States military to win, but they have an exceedingly difficult task.
All right, so exceedingly difficult task that you're trying to make easier with Swarmer. Let's talk about the proceeds from the IPO and what you're going to invest them in. Where does this capital go?
Sure. Of course, more engineers to go from bomber drones and FPVs to, of course, maritime interceptor capability, because Swarmer is a brain, it's a capability that allows drones to cooperate and behave and to attack targets autonomously. You can imagine the demand signal blinking red across the world to be able to intercept all these cheap drones and to meet threat with a cost-effective threat. Not the ridiculous $2 million solution that the U.S. defense cartel comes up with, but rather very cost-effective solutions so that we, A, can be effective, and B, not bankrupt as a country.
So, Eric, it is clear that the center of gravity in warfare is changing. As you continue along this path and you act as the non-executive chairman of Swarmer, how do you see the battlefield looking in 5-10 years? Just how big of seismic shifts are we about to witness?
It's like going from crossbows or longbows to machine guns, not just even rifles. That's how much of a change. Warfare will even change society because of the democratization of precision strike. when, just imagine the difference. An old Javelin missile, which cost $150,000 a shot with a $200,000 launcher, now you can do the same job with a $750 drone out to 15 kilometers. It's an extraordinary change. And the Department of War, the U.S. defense budget has gotten way too bloated and way too dependent on a cartel that is not very competitive. The true innovation, the battle lab, has been Ukraine for the last 3-4 years, and we ignore that at our peril.
What lessons should we take from Ukraine, or Iran for that matter, Eric, in order to save money on defense? I mean, it's not something you want to scrimp on, obviously, but I think the administration right now has floated another $500 billion raise for the total budget to $1.5 trillion.
The Department of War is at least doing some programs like the Drone Dominance Program, where they've cast wide a net for new competitors to come into space and offer to say, hey, can you fly a drone? Can you hit a target? Can you do that? That's at the FPV level. That's kind of an infantry level weapon system. They need to do that across the spectrum to bust up the ridiculous cartel that is the Northrop, Lockheed, Raytheon guys that are literally going to bankrupt the country.
Just to that point, Eric, what competitive advantage does Swarmer have versus one of those defensive primes? What's to stop a Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman, for example, from trying to build something similar?
Well, they can try to do that, but the difference in Ukraine, you can go from idea to concept to prototype to combat proven in a matter of weeks or a month or two. You can't do that in the United States. The leading edge of battle in Ukraine, because the Russians are very adaptive, very capable in electronic warfare and jamming and counter drone systems. So your idea, your prototype is going to work very quickly, or it's going to get smoked. And you know that very quickly. The U.S. has a very lethargic design, build, testing program with a highly bureaucratic system that really prevents the kind of speed of iteration that you get with Ukraine, when people are operating out of their garages.
Eric, I want to get your take on the either benefits or drawbacks of autonomous weaponry. This debate was highlighted, obviously, by the Anthropic negotiations with the Department of Defense. But how do you see autonomous weaponry? Is it something that we need in our military, or is it something that we should fear?
Adapt or die. That genie is out of the bottle. Look at what the Iranians are doing with very low-cost weapons, destroying most of the key radar systems, having pushed U.S. aircraft back another 1,000 miles from the edge of battle because they're at risk. Those are with cheap, basically self-driving, right? The Shahed missile is basically navigating itself based on ground interaction, on terrain contour matching. You can call that even a version of AI. They're doing that, and they're doing that for $30,000 a piece versus multi-billion-dollar radar systems and weapon systems. It is a true asymmetry that we truly will ignore at our peril.
Eric, I think just, for everyday people, when they hear about this technology, the fear is always, what if it gets used at home? Not necessarily drones, but AI surveillance type technology, again, as Matt mentioned, that was part of the Anthropic disputes. You could always say, I trust this current administration, but what happens if there are other administrations that I don't trust? How do we balance out a genie that's out of the bottle, advanced tech that's become necessary for the battlefield versus concerns at homes and issues of privacy and otherwise for an American public?
I think people do not realize the extent of surveillance capitalism, and if they hold their iPhone or their Google mobile services device and it's calling a server 100,000 times an hour, reporting back who you are, where you go, who you call, what you buy, what you browse, your data is is leaving you at the rate of a machine gun every minute, every second, every hour. So that ship has sailed as well. There are other options for that, but that's for another day to talk about.
All right, Eric. Well, we're going to leave it there. Hope we get that other day to talk to you. Thank you for joining us, Eric Prince, non-executive chairman of Swarmer and the founder of Blackwater. Let's get a check on the markets this morning. Over an hour into your trading day, we are looking at equities still pushing higher. Not much movement, up 0.6%. NASDAQ outperforming, up 0.8, aided by a 10-year yield, which has been dropping. We're down 2 basis points at 419.65. A Fed decision tomorrow with probably not much happening, but Brent crude still moving higher by 1% as oil energy infrastructure continues to come under attack in Iran. Brent crude trading at $101 a barrel and 14 cents. Matt.
All right, coming up, NVIDIA's CEO makes $1 trillion AI pitch to investors. Venture capitalist Song Yi Yoon weighs in next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. The vitamin B complex will help with your cellular metabolism, help to protect your neurons, and boost up your energy levels. So take it every day. This is super important if you're 40 years of age or older. This will help to slow down the aging process. Take it every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Digestive enzyme complex, another great supplement to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? Because it helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. When you're breaking up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids using the digestive enzyme complex, you're reducing the load on your pancreas. So you're giving your pancreas some time to heal. A lot of people don't realize, no matter if you're healthy, your pancreas doesn't function as well as when it was younger. So it's really important to take the digestive enzyme complex. There's added benefit though. This has bromelain in it, which helps to break up clots. That's super important, especially with the crazy stuff that happened in 2020 and the aftershock of it. People still get strange clotting. Better start taking bromelain. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. In addition, this has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. Super important to take, like a crisis in 2020 or the cold season. So it's added benefit. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from digestive enzyme complex because it will help to break up your pre or post workout fueling. So please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. The website is the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, the number 5, and you get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen to.
That's the summary. I can't tell you the classified part, but that's the summary that's made public and it's accurate. It's been more than 2 weeks since this.
There's anti-American service purposely. Why has the House not heard testimony from a cabinet official about this?
I don't know if you've noticed, but they've given us multiple briefings. Well, it's still, we're in the midst of a couple of weeks long operation that's very sensitive in its mission and scope, and you cannot go outside of the classified briefing to give to the public the information because it would adversely affect our mission. They have well explained this to members of Congress in multiple briefings, both before, during, and after the operation commenced. We had the auditorium full of House members. The American public is getting. I've just relayed to you the summary of the non-classified information. All members are out talking about it around the clock. You're following them around with microphones, getting their clips and insights and their opinions. This is being watched very carefully, but we're in the midst of an operation that is winding down. According to the president himself, we're very close to having the mission completed. The Strait of Hormuz is an ongoing issue, and he has, I think, rightfully called upon allies and friends and other nations who depend much more than we do on the Strait of Hormuz being open for their oil supply to step up and assist and put the terrorists and tyrants at bay, because that's good for stability and calm around the world, and America stands for that, okay? We are standing for freedom. We have taken out an enemy that was seeking to do us harm and wipe Israel off the map, and that's a good thing, and it will be a great thing for the stability of prices going forward and the calm around the world. So we ask our allies to step up and acknowledge that reality and help us out. I think this is a very reasonable proposal. Jay. Yeah. My plan is to move a clean extension of FISA. As you know, FISA in Section 702 is responsible for the large measure of intelligence that we use to protect and keep Americans safe. It expires in April, and we're looking at that deadline, and hoping that we can get a clean authorization done for at least 18 months. Now, why Why would we go that route? Because you remember last time it was up for reauthorization, we instituted 56 substantive reforms to FISA. By every measure and review, those are working just as we planned. We've not had the abuses that were happening before those reforms, and everybody in Congress understands the necessity of ensuring that we keep the homeland safe, except for the Democrats, who, as you know, are choosing not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. One more.
President Trump recently has said that the war in Iran would be over when he goes feel it in my bones. What does he mean by that?
Well, I think his bones are informed by the intelligence. Okay, so look, it's the commander-in-chief, whomever is the president, whomever is commander-in-chief under our constitutional system, is given a broad amount of latitude and authority. Their decisions are informed by all the intelligence and the experts, a large panel of them from the Joint Chiefs of Staff on down, who come in and advise the president. Every president makes a gut decision, and hopefully they make a prayerful decision. I think this president will as well. He's getting great advice from great people, and I'm very encouraged about where we are. I think this will wind down quickly, and it's going to be in the best interest of America going forward and of the whole world. Thank you.
Now it's a press conference from GOP leaders speaking just now. And as a reminder here, we are keeping an eye on Capitol Hill today because the Senate will hold a test vote to begin debate on the Save America Act this afternoon. That bill is the hallmark for President Trump's 2026 legislative agenda, requiring proof of citizenship to vote. That's expected at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. It requires just a simple majority to pass. Now, President Trump vowed not to endorse any lawmakers who vote against his Save America Act today. All right, we're going to step away for commercial break.
Let's take a look at some other news that's popping up. All right, this is important. Irish PM reveals how Europeans feel about U.S.-Iran conflict.
Leprechaun Lemonade is back at Raising Cane's for a limited time to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. One love.
Meet your new favorite email design platform. Create stunning emails without touching a single line of code. With our editor.
Today is very much an economic day in terms of the level of engagement I had at meetings, in terms of the very, very strong and growing economic relationship between the United States and Ireland, and over 800 Irish companies now investing in the US, creating over 200,000 jobs.
Big investments coming ahead of St. Patrick's Day. Joining me tonight ahead of the St. Patrick's Day meeting at the White House with President Trump is the Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, Michael Martin. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much indeed, Mike. Great to be here.
You're mentioning their economic investment. So you come not only with the traditional bowl of shamrocks, but also some $6 billion?
Well, that's only this week. I mean, overall, you're looking at about $390 billion of investment ongoing over the years, increasing all of the time. 800 Irish companies now employing thousands of people, about 200,000 people across America, which illustrates the transformation of the relationship between the US and Ireland. It's a two-way economic street. A lot of Irish companies coming to establish in US, and so we bring a lot of added value in terms of the innovative companies who are R&D based and so on like that. And it's a very, very positive story. And that investment will continue to grow. Of Irish companies coming in this week, around that 6.1 billion, made up by quite a number of Irish companies.
This is a precarious time, obviously, for the economy worldwide, for the situation with the war. How is the president and this action perceived over in your neck of the woods? You are often considered a whisperer between the U.S. and the EU sometimes. What is the real reading of it?
Well, I mean, more broadly in terms of the US-Europe relationship, Ireland, in particular because of our economic outlook and philosophy, has been a bit of a bridge and an access point for many, many US companies into the European market. I think in terms of all wars create uncertainty, and there is a concern in terms of this. On the other hand, everyone has acknowledged that you cannot have a rogue state like Iran getting control of nuclear weapons. And it was a very, very repressive regime. From the Irish perspective, we prefer peaceful resolution of conflict, if that's possible, and we want we ultimately believe in diplomacy and dialogue because we had war ourselves on the island of Ireland. It was a terrible 30-year conflict, and we learned a lot in terms of how to resolve conflict, and it took a long time.
The headlines over your way, Irish Times, Irish-American relations at their most strained since the foundation of the state. Guardian, a minefield. Taoiseach prepares for St. Patrick's Day visit to Washington. And Irish Independent, virtue signaling populism from Michael Martin won't mix with Donald Trump's unpredictability. They suggest there's some tension there. How do you read this?
I'm looking forward to the visit. I mean, I had a very good visit last year, and we had a very good engagement. He was an extremely courteous person at that stage. If you remember, this time last year, it was all about tariffs.
That's right.
But you know what? Europe and US managed to negotiate, managed to get a deal, Turnberry Agreement, and we got a landing zone. Again, as I say, we would be articulating that two-way relationship, both economic, but also culturally and right across the board, but also America 250. I mean, what's extraordinary, I was in Philadelphia for 2 days. Ireland was there at the very beginning in terms of the Declaration of Independence. 3 Irish signatories on that declaration, Thornton and Smith, and also John Dunlap, who was the man who printed it and who disseminated what was an Irishman.
George Washington attended a Friendly Sons of St. Patrick dinner in the late 1700s. I mean, it goes way back.
He did, and he wrote some very strong points, in terms of the character of Stephen Moylan, when he selected him, and he needed someone to work as his aide-de-camp at that particular time. That's the foundation, and so we come with mutual respect. We don't agree on everything, of course, and I think once we have that mutual respect and so forth, I think the relationship will continue to grow. I mean, there's 35 million people in America who claim Irish-American descent.
And millions more who just say it on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what's your message to them before I let you go?
Well, our message to them is that this year in the American 250, essentially we want to affirm what you did, the contribution you made to America in building America, but also you maintain that dual loyalty to your country here in America, your new country, but also that loyalty to Ireland and commitment to Ireland and advocacy for Ireland, which has stood us in great stead through the Good Friday Agreement, the peace process, onto that economic relationship, cultural and sporting relationship also.
Mr. Prime Minister, we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Israeli forces confirming that Michigan synagogue attacker's brother was a Hezbollah terrorist commander, and they got rid of him permanently during these strikes last week in Beirut. Our next guest knows all about the fighting the war on terror here and abroad. Jim Hansen ran counter-terror operations in the U.S. With the U.S. Army Special Forces and joins us now. So what is different about this over the last 4 attacks? What stands out from you, which is different from after 9/11 and the years after Iraq?
I think the change has been, previously we were concerned about what countries immigrants came from, whether they had been radicalized by a mosque or a particular radical imam preacher, and obviously the internet. But I think now we have to add to that the climate of violent hyperbolic rhetoric by the revolutionary left and some Democrats that is demonizing Israel, that is demonizing the Trump administration, for partnering with them in fighting against these terrorists, and in some way is inciting some of this violence.
Hey, Jim, I was watching video in New York City, in Midtown, where hundreds of people were chanting for the Ayatollah, for Nasrallah, and for Hamas and Hezbollah in New York City. I mean, every one of those should have been looked at with facial recognition and find out where they're getting this sentiment from, don't you think?
100%, and we need to trace back and see who's funding those. I mean, we know in a lot of ways it is the usual suspects from the revolutionary left. It's Soros and the rest of those open society type organizations. And we need to look at what they're doing to fund it, how they're stirring up this kind of anger in a way that now has boiled over and is causing deaths to American citizens for their cause.
So I want to bring you to a quote in the Wall Street Journal about this new Made in America terrorist trend. Western counterterrorism operated for decades on a simple premise: threats from somewhere else. That premise no longer holding, the ideology no longer needs territory, command structures, or training camps. It travels easily, moving through digital networks and personal grievances. It is radicalized, unfolding quietly inside their own societies. So that's pretty much what you were saying, correct? You don't have to see if they went to Lebanon. You don't have to see if they want to spend any considerable time in Iran. You just see where they're logging on, which is tough to do.
And how do you do that in a society where you cannot discriminate based on a religion? You can't say Muslims are the problem. You have to say Islamists or jihadists. And how do you tell what they're doing within an insular community, where that may be more acceptable than it is other places? And in this case, I think we should have been able to find the fact that this guy had a brother in Lebanese Hezbollah. They have their own Lebanese Hezbollah scouts. So I think it's likely that this guy may have been a scout as a young kid in that village. So I think we have to look at all of those, where they came from and how they got radicalized here in the United States.
I would hope there will be an asterisk next to his name, whatever he did. But what about the Old Dominion? I mean, this guy's in jail for helping ISIS, gets out on good behavior, I guess, after 6 years, and no one's tracking him? Next thing you know, he's killing one of these great Americans, this ROTC teacher who, if you look at his military career, he's just a superstar. And he dies because this guy gets out of prison after telling us he's ISIS.
Yeah, that's a dismal failure of the people who run that part of our justice system, and the mentality of the Democrats that says, oh, no, everyone should have a second chance. I don't believe anyone who has been involved with terrorism in any way should have a second chance at anything. If he's naturalized, denaturalized, and remigrate him right out of the United States.
All right, Jim, thanks so much. Hopefully we don't have any more terror attacks to talk about, but Sally, I think we will. Jim Hansen, thank you. I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Foods are great.
Israel on this. It's pretty insulting to the American president.
Yeah, it is. Kent, the National Counterterrorism Center is a high-ranking office, but it's not the most senior, position in the intelligence community for sure. So sort of calibrate that in your mind as you think about it. This is not the kind of resignation letter I've ever seen before. It's clearly somebody who's angry and frustrated, has suffered a lot of personal. He suffered a lot personally over the years. He clearly is an opponent of what the president campaigned on, or opponent of what the president campaigned on, ending orders, and is frustrated by this decision. Kent is somebody who's very close with Tucker Carlson. The New York Times just posted a brief interview with Tucker Carlson praising Kent for this decision to resign. He's also a failed multi-time congressional candidate, so he's got sort of an elaborate backstory, and the tragic death of his wife obviously is front and center in that backstory. So we'll wait and see how the president decides to handle this.
Yeah, the Tucker detail is important too. Who's been lobbying against this war. Thank you, Eamon. Eamon Jabbers, keep you close in case we hear from the president. Let's turn now to the macro environment. Here with us at Post 9 is the former director of the National Economic Council during President Trump's first term, Gary Cohn. He's also the former president of Goldman Sachs and current vice chair of IBM. Welcome back. It's good to have you.
Always good to be here.
How are you thinking about some of the implications for the market around what's happening in Iran?
I'm going to go back to how. So I think you have to start with the basic issue of supply demand of some of the most important commodities in the world, whether it be nitrogen that we're not talking about as we head into the growing season.
Should we be talking about nitrogen?
We should be talking about nitrogen.
Why?
At the end of the day, it's fertilizer. We know the impact of fertilizer on growing crops. We're getting close to starting to plant crops in this country. And without nitrogen, without fertilizer, we will have diminished yields. And again, it's a yield game. We're talking about oil, and I think talking about oil is important. One thing that we should note, though, and I think we got to be complimentary, we in the United States do not have a supply problem. This is one of the first crises that we've ever lived through in this country where we haven't had a supply problem. We didn't have to worry about molecules. Yes, we're part of the global pricing mechanism, so the price has gone up, but the supply is not going down. if you look at some of the Asian economies right now, they're literally shutting down businesses, shutting down schools, shutting down government because they don't even have supply at any price.
That's why I'm so confused as to why our European allies wouldn't want to help us, given they need oil more than we do.
Well, Sarah, they do. They're the ones paying the price right now, and they're the ones that need the oil. On the flip side, trying to weigh this as I try and do, come up with a reasonable answer. They were not informed about this invasion. They did not know about it. They've also had a bit of a contentious relationship with the White House during the past year, whether it be over tariffs, whether it be over Ukraine, whether it be over all these things. Look, at some point though, your own economic stability has to outweigh the other issues going on. So I like you, I'm a little bit overall surprised at some point if they don't engage with us. Like, you also have to understand that the Europeans, and we saw this in Ukraine, have had a real apprehension to getting involved in any conflict whatsoever. They've been sort of adverse to that. So, but again, we got a reality here, and sometimes when you're forced with a realistic decision of, am I going to shut my economy down? Am I going to slow my businesses down? Am I going to curtail? And there's a solution to it by getting involved. Maybe they come to the solution of getting involved.
I mean, they would say it's not the solution, that you're not going to get something with the European frigate that you can't get with the U.S. Navy. And yesterday the president said we don't need it anyway.
Yeah. Well, the president has gone back and forth on this.
Yes, he has.
And I think it would be great symbolism for the other countries to get involved in a disagreement that has caused them strife as well. This is not just a country that's anti-American. This is a country that's anti-capitalism, anti-wealth, anti-progression, anti-gay, anti-everything. So if you think about it from a European standpoint, they've got they've got to stick in this game as well.
Right. So back to the sort of economic impact for the U.S. I mean, you know oil. You started, right, as an oil trader, right, way back when. If you would have said that they closed the Strait of Hormuz, which is what, 20% of the world's production right now, that there are attacks on oil infrastructure and facilities in UAE, in Kuwait, attacks on Saudi Arabia, and Brent is at 101. Is that surprising? Should it be higher?
It's not totally surprising to me. So, I don't want to get too deep in the analytics here, but we are in what's called the shoulder season of the year. We're not in a heating oil season, and we're not in a heavy air conditioning season. So normally you would see refineries starting to go down for maintenance. Refiners would be shifting their refining mix over from heavy heating oil to very lighter fuels that we have. Some are driving fuels, some are difference in gas. So if this were happening in the middle of the dead of the cold of the winter, or this were happening in August when we were burning maximum energy for electricity, you would have a little bit of a different outcome. That said, we also, the United States has changed its position. We used to be one of those very dependent importers. We're now a dependent exporter. We're a huge exporter of LNG, which is our oversupply of natural gas. So there is more of a balancing mechanism, and the world's gotten more efficient. I think our overall demand for oil today is dramatically lower than it had been at any other time when we had a major disruption. And so whether it's EVs, whether it's natural gas, whether it's windmills, you have to factor all of the alternatives into the equation. And so the direness of the cutting off of 20% of the oil today is not as dire as it once was. Russia's producing as much oil as they have in a while. Interestingly, we lifted the sanctions on Russia. Russia can continue to ship oil. And so there's a bit of a balancing going on the demand side it's come off since last time we had really trouble supply side.
I wanted to read you what Tony P. over at Goldman wrote today about equities. It strikes me that the view of folks who are closest to commodity supply chains, i.e. the black belts who know these markets deeply, seem to be the most negative. Do you think that's true, being one of them or a former one of them, and looking at how equities have taken all kind of this in stride?
I don't know where I fall in this in Tony's world. Look, I think what the people that grew up in the commodities world know is we know that if this whole war were to end tomorrow, the skirmish were to end tomorrow, we open up the Straits of Hormuz, it's not turning on a spigot. We've been down long enough where countries have had to shut in production, they've had to curtail production, they've had to slow down. So the world's not going to reset back to prior export limits overnight. It's going to take some natural evolution of turning back on refineries, turning back on oil wells, turning back on pipelines, and just all the congestion of ships in that part of the world. It's going to take, you can only load a certain amount of ships at a time. And so it's going to take more time to unwind this. That said, and I think that said is important, I think people are pretty optimistic right now overall. And to the extent that it gets worked out and there's a more defined period of time to when we normalize, I think the more bullish people are. So that sort of offsets, people like me that grew up in shipping oil around the world and understanding the logistics of it. I think the reality of knowing there's an end probably overwhelms the reality of the supply showing up a week or 2 or 3 later than you would have thought.
What do you think about the economic hit? Is there going to be one, and how substantial?
Is there going to be
an economic hit?
An economic, well, I would say we're having a bit of an economic hit. We're clearly having inflationary trends run through the economy. I think consumer confidence is getting hit to some extent, and we're seeing less and less consumption, especially in the middle to lower wage population, which is a story we've been talking about for the last year. We've been talking about the unemployment picture. We've been talking about consumption at the lower wages population, and when you go through times like this, and you go through stress, and you have prices rise, if you're on a fixed income and you're spending an extra 50 cents a gallon for gasoline, that's being taken directly out of your disposable income, and you're able to consume less goods and less services. And so I think the American consumer today is feeling that. So we are having economic consequences today.
And how bad do you think it'll get?
I don't know how.
Change your view of recession odds, for instance?
It doesn't really change my view of recession odds right now. There's so many other stimulus coming through. Like Torsten mentioned, we've got the big beautiful bill coming through. We've got tax refunds coming through. We're in a period of time where there's enough government spending and enough government stimulus around where I'm not worried about a recession. But we've been having this discussion for 5 years.
You're never worried.
I've been on the opposite side of you for 5 years, so I just want to make it clear.
Lately, there's been no sign.
Well, because Torsten put out a piece today that talks about the frequencies of recession. So I'm not worried about a recession, but I am worried about the overall consumption flywheel in the United States. As the longer people are spending an extra 50 plus cents a gallon for gasoline, it's coming directly out of their disposable income. And we all know that gas inflation is the single worst inflation we can have because people get out of the car or truck, they hold the nozzle down, and they watch the numbers tick. And they knew exactly what they paid last week, and they knew what they paid the week before. And if they're paying $20 or $30 extra this week, that's
but it's only 3% of their overall,
It isn't. It's not. If you look at sort of middle income America or lower income America that lives in more rural places, that drives their pickup truck to work 100 miles because they live 100 miles, it has a dynamic impact on their consumption capabilities, and also everything else that's getting delivered. The price of leisure just went up. Airline tickets are going up. Even though there's good demand, airline tickets are going up. The price of getting something delivered to you is going up. The price of baking is going up. It's all trickled down through the economy, and it may be 2 or 3% here and 2 and 3% there, but those 2 and 3% add up to really drive people to different short-term consumption patterns, and it also drives people to have less and less confidence in themselves, so they tend to spend as little as they possibly can.
You mentioned the pressure on some of these Asian countries.
Mm-hmm.
The Gulf states are in a different position than they were a few weeks ago. Does that change their CapEx commitment resolve or their investing resolve in either the United States overall or the AI build-out or something different?
I think it doesn't change. I think they will continue to invest. The one thing we know, they're going to invest a lot more money in military equipment and defense equipment. So, the one thing we've all learned is the state of military war fighting has changed, and being prepared for drones and being prepared for drone warfare and having the infrastructure permanently there in the Middle East is particularly, we are going to see major CapEx in that area. I don't think it will stifle any of the investment that's going on in the data centers, in AI, in growing their economy. Fortunately, they're beneficiaries of this oil price if and when they can sell oil. Now, no one's really harvesting that much of this price right now. The Russians are probably the biggest beneficiary of this because they're the ones actually selling oil right now. In the Middle Eastern countries that normally flourish as oil prices go up, they're not flourishing because they're not selling.
What do you think the Fed does with all this?
I think the more interesting thing coming out of the Fed is we're going to get dot plots tonight, or scattergrams, as I've been calling this, because they don't make a lot of sense. Well, I guess they do make sense to the people doing it. So I think what we're going to learn tonight is we're going to learn what people's forward projections are. And I think those forward projections will be a telltale sign of how people think about what's going on in the Middle East and how quickly it will end. The longer it goes on, I think the higher you would probably leave your interest rate forward curve. The quicker you think it's going to end, you probably are more inclined to potentially talk about lowering rates, meaning that this inflation bump is a bump, and meaning that we've got an unemployment picture that's not rosy, and you could get yourself to a position where cutting rates makes more sense if you thought this was a short-term event.
So at this point, what, one cut this year? That's what the market's pricing in.
Yeah, I think the market's probably right. I think that when we get a new Fed chair, Kevin will come in and give us what he's promised. It'll give us a cut, but at the same time, he will start selling down the balance sheet. So, you maybe get a cut in the front end, you'll provide securities, extra supply securities in the back end. I don't think the front end cut lowers overall interest rates on the curve. So it doesn't do a lot for home ownership. It doesn't do a lot for credit cards. It doesn't do a lot for automobile loans because those are priced on the 5 to 7 to 30-year part of the curve. And I think that part of the curve is going higher, not lower. We're going to see more, I believe we see more
Then what's
steepness
the
in the
point? Then tell him not to shrink the balance sheet.
Well, but Kevin, I agree with Kevin that the Fed was never meant to have a massive balance sheet. It bought the balance sheet when it was trying to stimulate economic activity. We were back in the zero interest rate environment. So now that we're in the higher interest rate environment, we can settle down. But overall, if I'm the Fed chair, you would want less of a balance sheet. You would want to have the ability when things got tough to have the dry powder to use the balance sheet effectively. And I think Kevin, having lived through 2008 and sort of arbitrated all of the different bank discussions in the mergers, potential mergers and failed mergers, he understands the importance of having a balance sheet to lever up when he needs to.
Right, but he also understands the impact of lower interest rates on people who need it most.
He does. But look, newsflash, the Fed has never been able to influence any other interest rate except Fed funds, which is the overnight rate that banks charge each other. The market determines everything beyond Fed funds. It's all market driven. Now, will the Fed put some influence in that market if they sell their balance sheet? Yes, they will have some undue or due influence on selling down that balance sheet. And I think Kevin and the other Fed governors will have to make a decision. Is selling down that balance sheet to give themselves dry powder in the future worth it if it steepens the curve in the short term? And I think they probably will come to the conclusion that it is worth it.
We're going to be talking a lot more about that in the months ahead. Gary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Always a treat. Gary Cohn.
Nice 20 minutes with you.
All right, we're going to go to another clip by Judge Napolitano interviewing Professor John Mearsheimer. Now, Mearsheimer has been, he's a professor. He's one of the big three, which is, he's the younger of the big three when it comes to political science and international affairs. The big three are basically Kissinger, Brzezinski, and Mearsheimer. All right. Fukuyama may be, a close third, but Mearsheimer, when he's called a neorealist, neorealism in terms of international affairs. All right. But when he speaks for decades, there's no answer. There's no answer. He always he's a cynic. He just, everything that happens, he's a cynic and he finds the, what's wrong with it. All right, fine. But present a solution. And that's the problem with Mearsheimer. He doesn't provide solutions. He says that Trump's so bad, Israel's going to fail, and blah, blah, blah. Provide a solution, Mearsheimer. You have all this academic experience, and sitting and watching world events for decades, why can't you provide a solution? You can't. You can't. All right, so while we dissect his argument, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million, max 14 or max 35. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Max 14 is 14 parts per million. But you take it the same way. You use it the same way. Teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle, about 20 seconds, and swallow it. This will help to boost up the immune system, improve your oral cavity, help the health of your epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. And when you do that, you're neutralizing and improving your innate immune system. It's really important to do every day. I've been doing this for 6 years. Now, with max 35, max 14, or cleanse, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, like the cold season or something more major, guess what? Take a tablespoon or two a day, neutralize, do that every day until you weather the storm. Once it passes, then go back to your maintenance dose. It's really simple, but take this every day to help to boost your immune system. So please go to my store, get the max 35, cleanse, or max 14. They're at different price points with different parts per million. I also have structural needle silver lozenges and drops. For the drops, you can get honey and lemon, blueberry, which is very popular, and cherry flavor. Or you can get the lozenges in orange splash, vitamin C, and manuka honey. Very high quality structural nano silver lozenges and drops. Once you have that throat irritation, take them right away during the cold season, the allergy season. It's really important. A lot of people don't realize that if you have something benign, like just a common cold or allergies for a week, you're doing damage to cells and tissues. It takes 2 weeks to heal that damaged tissue and those damaged cells. So if you have allergies or common cold 3 times a year, 9 weeks out of the year, you're either sick or recovering. So this is the reason why people that are chronically sick, even if it's benign, like a common cold, you age faster. So if you mitigate it or you prevent it, you actually allow your body to heal, focus on other things, and you're slowing down the aging process. So by taking structural nanosilver lozenges and drops and taking the max 35 or cleanse, you're actually slowing down the aging process because you're mitigating benign, common infection. So if you don't believe me, take a look at someone that's constantly sick, and you'll notice that their skin is not as healthy, their eyes aren't as healthy, their metabolism isn't as well, they have less energy. So if you pay attention to me, you'll be able to build up all those vector directions, vector points, to help to slow down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5 because I want you to save money, because there is elevated cost because of the Biden administration, tariffs, the war in Iran. Affordability is hard for many people. I'm trying to help by making sure that you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All caps, discount 5. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's listen to Professor John Mearsheimer on how he's a neo-realist, but never has an answer on how to solve the problem. No, what he is a cynic.
Undeclared wars are commonplace. Tragically, our government engages in preemptive war, otherwise known as aggression, with no complaints from the American people. Sadly, we have become accustomed to living with the illegitimate use of force by government. To develop a truly free society, the issue of initiating force must be understood and rejected.
What if sometimes, to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Well, for sure there's overreach of government and there's an overreach of the national security state. Is your representative really paying attention to their constituents at home or the lobbying group? So there are many problems here. But when you have an existential threat at the horizon, you better take care of it right away. Now, do you think that Iran, when or if they get nuclear weapons, is going to be a real rational actor on the international stage? Look at how irrational they are, where they're bombing their own, quote, brothers in the region. Just imagine if they had a nuclear weapon. So it's sometimes, Judge Polentano, you need to kill the enemy.
Hi, everyone.
Grab your guns, your permits, your moves. AI levels of your pitch gets it in a groove. Draft design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Do you support Israel and the Jewish people? Now, more than ever, Israel needs committed friends around the world to...
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, March 17th, 2026, St. Patrick's Day here in the West, and particularly in the U.S., and especially here in New York City. Professor John Mearsheimer will be with us in just a moment on how the Iranian patience is undermining President Trump's impatience. But first this. Don't you just cringe when people say, I told you so? Sorry, I told you gold and silver would reap the benefits due to excessive money printing, inflation, and global uncertainty. It's here. It's happened. Gold.
Let me get this straight. Some dude, Judge Polentano, who has a law degree and used to be a judge, that's the reason why he's Judge Polentano, all right, is going to tell you on how to invest. And his commercial here, this is I'm so tired of podcasters. Right? I know this show is kind of like a podcast, but I'm trying to tell you how to make money from the news instead of being a victim. You want to be a little Rothschild? You know, you want to be a master of your own destiny? Well, you better start listening to me and not some clown like Judge Polentano. So these people, they have these podcasts and they do these gold commercials and all this. This is all bet against America. Guess what? Never, ever, ever bet against the United States. I think J.P. Morgan, all right, back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, was a little bit more knowledgeable about the financial arena. And he said, J.P. Morgan said, never bet against the United States. Never. Never. Why? Because when you do, she always surprises you and kicks your ass. Here's a classic example. Judge Polentano saying that he's for the Constitution and he's for Jefferson. But when Jefferson became president, he actually was a little bit more aligned to the Federalists. Amazing how that worked. All right? Now, Judge Polentano is telling you to bet against America. Buy gold, buy silver. Oh. No, I'll tell you how to make money. I'll give you details. All right? The S&P 500 is trading at 6,728. All right? So, not too long ago, just a few days ago, it was trading at 6,650. All right? So take your trusty calculator, take 6,727 minus 6,650. All right? That's 77. And you divide it by 6,650. All right? In 2 days, you would have made 1.1, almost 1.2%. Now, if you pay attention to me, this is going to break 7,000. Probably go to 7,400 or 7,800 by year end, maybe even higher. Okay? Now, people that you really think that you're going to be safe in gold, while most gold products that you buy financially in the financial markets, it's not physical. It's just settled by cash. There's not enough gold to go around. So what's the real reason why you're doing it? Oh, you think that your money's going to be safer in gold. All right. Try it. I don't think so. Don't bet against the United States. All right? Don't. Now people go, well, gold's trading at 5,000 or and silver's up and blah, 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 blah. If you're really worried about inflation with a complex social system that has, built-in negative feedback loops, if you're worried about inflation, you buy into equities. Because equities will rise faster than the inflation rate. And that's the reason why bonds start to trade down, because they're worried about inflation. So why would you go into gold? And when you buy into the stock market, you get dividends. Are you getting dividends from gold? Not so much. Depends on how you do it. Maybe if you buy a miner, but that's like buying equities. So here, you got a judge. Look at that face. He's going to tell you, look at that, look at those eyes. He's going to tell you that, bet against America. Buy gold and silver. Yeah. Inflation. I just told you how to make money on the energy market and what's going on here. On the up and the down. He's just saying, there's going to be inflation, buy precious metals. Really? Really, Judge? Really? You really understand, even though you're a judge and a lawyer, what actually Jefferson did? Not just what he said, what he did. Isn't there a phrase? Don't pay attention to so much what someone says, but what they do. Learn some history, Judge. All right, that's just Judge Polentano and the bullshit that he's projecting on his podcast about bet against America. And we haven't gotten to the neo-realism of Mearsheimer.
Silver reached all-time highs. Did you call Lear Capital and buy some? It's not too late. Experts are predicting higher prices ahead.
So all he cares about is making ad revenue for his podcast. But he's rich enough. Why is he doing it? Greed. But Lear Capital, precious metal, and they've been around since 1997. Wow, that's a long time. But if precious metals are so precious, why the fuck are you selling? You ever thought about that? Why are people selling gold to people that are listening to his podcast? Because you're a sucker. That's why.
Why? Nothing has changed. Geopolitical chaos, cost of living crises, and a weaker dollar are driving central banks to...
Weaker dollar. Really? We're at the 10-year average. We have a strong dollar because of COVID. Dipshit. Cost of living crisis. Inflation because of all the printing we did during COVID and the lack of shock therapy by the Federal Reserve during the Biden administration had an aftershock for the costs that people are incurring today. Inflation is much lower. It's in the range of 2 to 3%, around 2.8, 2.9%. So it's stable, but absolute cost is elevated from 2, 3, 4 years ago. And that's what people are feeling. But how do you fight that? Oh, let me tell you, buy equities. Because that's what the smart people are doing. Smart people aren't buying gold. Don't be stupid. Geopolitical chaos. Oh, you got to be fearful, so get into gold, get into silver. The geopolitical chaos that's happening in Iran right now, that's affecting the oil markets. You've been paying attention to me on all my recent transmissions. I'm telling you how to short and long the damn oil's price. So you're making money either way. Yeah. Another dipshit. Another guy that has a following, that has a podcast, that doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about.
Boost their gold reserves. Forecasts suggest gold could hit $6,000 an ounce and silver $200 an ounce. Even Morgan Stanley ditched the six.
Yeah, and the S&P 500, under those circumstances, most likely would be at 8,000, 9,000. So which one would you rather have? And if you believe the crap that he's saying, that the world's going to end because of the political chaos and the dollar's going to weaken and blah, blah, blah. Again, don't bet against America, Judge. No? Don't bet against America. See? Fear. This is all about fear. It's all about fear. And he doesn't give a shit because he's getting ad revenue. Lear Capital selling gold and silver. Precious metals. Why are you selling precious metals?
'40 rule for 60-20-20, putting 20% into precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call the best in the business and the...
No. 70% equities, 30% bonds. Most likely on the belly of the curve, 7 to 10 year. Judge, please, just stick to the law.
Well, I trust Lear Capital. Get their reports, get the facts, get some gold and silver. Tell them the judge sent you and get up to $20,000 in bonus gold or silver.
Oh, Judge is an old guy. And the people that are listening to him are old. And they're worried. And so you play up on their fear and you buy gold for the elderly. That's what this is. I hope you understand it.
Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearChecksNap.com. Professor Mearsheimer, welcome here, my dear friend. Before we get to your analysis of Iranian inpatient.
Now, Mearsheimer, he's one of the big three. Like I said, Kissinger, Brzezinski, and Mearsheimer. All right? He's a neo-realist when it comes to political science. I believe he's a professor at the University of Chicago. He did serve in the military, so thank you for your service, Mearsheimer. But the bottom line is this: you have no fucking answer. All you do is complain. You're a cynic.
Iranian patients and Trump impatience. I want to note that this is the 20th anniversary of one of the most groundbreaking books in the post-World War II era, your book that you wrote with Professor Stephen Walt, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, which really opened up the eyes to...
I think that I didn't read the book, right? But I've listened to a lot of Mearsheimer, so I know what he's gonna say. Now, in this regard, I agree with him. Lobbying groups of all kinds, Big Ag, the Israeli lobbying group, the insurance lobbying group, the healthcare lobbying group. There are many lobbying groups that are circumventing your freedoms for their benefit. And your representatives in Congress and in the Senate don't care about you. They only care about the lobbying group. So there's a major problem with the Israeli lobbying group. I totally agree with that. And we need to set stronger laws in place to truncate the power of the lobbying group.
Entire world of the influence that the lobby has on American foreign policy. Today, it seems like a vice, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly does. I think that the lobby is as strong as ever today. And
even stronger than when you wrote this book and did all this research 25 years ago.
No, I don't think that the lobby group is as strong. I think that they've been weakening since October 7th. Why? Because if you look at the Democratic Party is not older white guys anymore, which seem to align with the Israeli lobbying group. It's starting to shift to a more belligerent left-wing party that's antithetical to the needs and the wants and the desires of the Israeli lobbying group. So the Israeli lobbying group is weakening, not strengthening, or as strong as. Absolutely not. Just look at Schumer, Senator Schumer, who's Jewish, who happens to put cheese on his hamburgers, which you're not supposed to if you're Jewish. But the thing is that he's even concerned about the left wing of the party. The Democratic Party is changing. It's no longer centrist or slightly left of center. It's ultra left. So the lobbying group for the Israelis, the Israeli lobbying group, is weakening. It's not. But is it strong? Is it strong? Yes. But is it as strong today as it was 10 years ago? I don't think so. I think that the inflection point happened when the left wing started to become more belligerent and October 7th happened of 2023. But let's listen to the neo-realist that has no answer to anything.
Yeah, I think that it's important to emphasize that the lobby operates at two levels. One is that it goes to enormous lengths to influence public discourse about Israel and the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And furthermore, it goes to great lengths to influence policy, actual government policy. In terms of actual government policy, it's clearly as strong as ever. Where it's really lost out is in terms of the discourse. The discourse has fundamentally changed. Criticism of Israel, criticism of the U.S. relationship with Israel has become abundant. It was almost unimaginable that we would be where we are today in terms of the public discourse when Steve and I wrote the article.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making, Professor. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when the left wing of the party wasn't as belligerent, as crazy, there wasn't so much pushback. Now there is. There's lots of pushback. So the lobbying group isn't as strong today. That doesn't mean it's not strong, but it's not as strong. It's based on relative, you know. What's the comps? What's the comparisons? Back to the neo-realist.
The discourse has changed, and the big question that you have to ask yourself is how long can the policy of supporting Israel no matter what remain in place in a world where the discourse and public opinion has changed so drastically?
Can overwhelming public opinion overcome the extraordinary wealth that the lobby has and the manner in which it has used that wealth, funding the political campaigns of 2/3 of the members of Congress?
Well, we're going to see moving forward because there's been a sea change inside the Democratic Party, and exactly how it plays out remains to be seen. I think it's hard to imagine someone like Rahm Emanuel or Josh Shapiro, who are both joined at the hip with Israel, becoming presidential or even vice presidential candidates inside the Democratic Party. And you already see Gavin Newsom distancing himself from Israel and from AIPAC. And I think that will be the trend in the Democratic Party moving forward. And then if you look at what's happening in the Republican Party, I think that Tucker Carlson is the wave of the future in the Republican Party. So I think that in terms of actual policymakers, that you're likely at some point in the future, hard to say where, you're going to get a change.
I usually wouldn't.
With custom homes, breathtaking sights, and neighbors from across the country, Highland Green is the best move you'll ever make.
I usually wouldn't run a clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene with John Mearsheimer, but she does crystallize the problems in the Republican Party very nicely. This is from yesterday, Chris number 12.
Why would an American president lead his political party into the midterms waging a full-scale major war completely unprovoked on Iran on behalf of Israel? And that's the way most Americans see it. They see this is for Israel, not for America. Why would an American president do that, which is forcing gas prices to hike?
Isn't she paying attention to what the Ayatollah said for decades? The United States, the great Satan. The little Satan is Israel. We have a target on our back. The United States is a target of Iran. You got to pay attention to this. So to say that the United States, look at Rushdie. Remember Rushdie about the satanic verses, and they put a hit on him. They tried to kill him multiple times, and they ended up stabbing him, and he lost an eye. That's what they wanted to do to America. So We can't keep on kicking the can down the road. And what about remembering the Iran hostage crisis? What about the bombing of the Cole? What about the bombing of Beirut in 1983, bitch? It's all about payback. And if we had an opportunity to kick ass and knock them out, we should have, and we did. Here, this is a classic fucking example of America first. I don't want to go to war. This is the same bullshit that's going to happen when China ends up invading Taiwan. You're going to have a lot of people like her, MTG. You're going to have a lot of people like her that's saying we shouldn't do anything, yet we lose our hegemonic power. But not just that. She's too stupid to even see what just happened. We went into Venezuela to get the heavy crude to make sure our PADD 3 refineries in Texas and Louisiana stay online. And then we go over to Iran and start controlling the oil supply to shoot over the bow of China, saying, do you really want to take Taiwan? Because guess what? We just controlled your oil, your energy supply. So all this is about the war in the Pacific. Why can't she see this? Because she's stupid.
Right here, going into spring break, where families are going to be driving out of town, going into summer, declaring and waging a major.
Think about this, what she's saying. Think about what MTG's saying. Kick the can down the road so you can have cheap gas for the summer. Kick the can down the road so the Republican Party has a better chance in the midterm elections. Selfishness. Selfishness. And this is the reason why on my show on Sunday live, I was talking to John Hoke. And you can see the episode, I think it's episode 42. 41. Watch it. I state that no one in the world, including you and me, deserve to live because we've done so many things wrong, especially in the last, I don't know, your whole life. Nobody deserves to live. We don't deserve our Constitution because we're not willing to fight for it. When we see a threat, we have too many people that are sitting on the fence saying, oh, I don't want to do anything. What about the women out there when the info meal wasn't available during the Biden administration? Did the women protest? No. Did you have a society really galvanized and pushing back on the government during the COVID years? No. So you don't even deserve the freedoms you have. Look at all this prosperity we have in the United States. All the freedoms and the economic prosperity. Do you deserve it? No. But she's like, no, we have to make sure that we're selfish. We have to make sure that we have cheap gas for vacations that you really don't even need. Oh, we have to stay at home and not go and fight in a foreign war because we're America first. That's what she's saying. Selfishness. Selfishness.
that seems to have no end in sight, that is not de-escalating, it's escalating every single day. And it just doesn't make sense. We said on every single rally stage, no more foreign wars.
No more foreign wars. Okay, obviously she's not too bright, and she probably didn't read Homer or the Odyssey or the Iliad. Probably didn't Thucydides. She probably didn't read Thucydides. She probably didn't understand the Thucydides trap. She probably doesn't realize that if we don't build up our military, if we don't check China's expansionism on the first and second island chains, that we're going to lose our hegemonic power. And our way of life will radically change because they will control the shipping lanes. You know that little thing called the 9-dash line? MTG, you should know this. So certain wars need to be fought. So what she represents America first? She's saying no foreign wars anymore? Really? Do you want to have the 21st century China? Because that's going to be antithetical to American prosperity. No, we got to get our Julius Caesar ethos, go into Gaul, chop off the fucking heads, put them on stakes, and march back to Rome. That's what we need to do. Instead of a bunch of people going, oh, this is the type of person that weakens America, not strengthens it. There are wars that you need to fight for. There are things that you need to just get the job done. And this has been in the works for 47 years. 47 years. The lack of leadership, being afraid. Now people would say, well, Dr. Paul Cottrell, that's going to help the Israelis. It's also going to help the United States. And it's going to allow us to have more political and geopolitical leverage against China. Now, do you want that leverage? When they want to expand to the first and second island chains, and oh, by the way, don't think that Hawaii is only 5 islands. I believe it's 137 islands. They're little, but they expand all the way to the second island chains. So when they expand, that means chipping away at the state of Alaska. Or chipping away at the state of Alaska, but also the state of Hawaii. So we have 137 islands for the state of Hawaii. You have the archipelago island chain from Alaska. So when they expand, when China wants to expand, that's eroding our territory. So America first? Well, guess what? It's better to be on the offensive than the defensive. It's better to be prepared than unprepared. But that's what MTG is all about, because she's stupid. America First policy is stupid. America First. You know this whole term, America First? It came during World War II with Hindenburg. He didn't want to fight against the Nazis. Now let's assume that she was teleported to right before World War II, before the United States got involved. And her America First agenda took hold and prevented the United States from getting involved. You'd probably be speaking German.
More regime change. It's time to put America first, and this is a complete betrayal of those campaign promises.
To get into domestic politics with you, but she hits the nail on the head, doesn't she?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I agree with everything she says. It's quite remarkable that I often find myself in agreement with Marjorie these days when she's talking about American foreign policy. And I would just note too, going back to what I said earlier, the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is making those.
So this guy is an educated individual. Mearsheimer, top three in political science in the United States. And guess what? He doesn't have an answer to making sure that the Chinese don't get the first and second island chains and erode our territorial sovereignty. Because you got to remember, this is going to involve the archipelago of Alaska and the island chain of Hawaii. It's not just 5 islands for Hawaii. It's a lot more than that. What's the answer, Mearsheimer? Oh, cynics don't have answers to fucking anything.
Comments publicly today is really quite remarkable given the context that existed when Steve and I wrote the article and the book back in the day.
Right.
Public discourse has just changed in fundamental ways. And by the way, your show is a clear reflection of that.
The lobby can't be very happy with the way the war is going, can it?
No, this is a disaster.
Yeah, there's breaking news going on with Trump in the press. Hold on.
With on China, it's a little different story. We're resetting the meeting, and it looks like it'll take place in about 5 weeks. We're working with China. They were fine with it. We're going to. I look forward to seeing President Xi. He looks forward to seeing me, I think. But I do look forward to seeing him. We have a good relationship with China. China actually has become economically for us very good, as you know. It's much different than it was in the past. And we have a very good working relationship with China. So we're making it in about 5 or 6 weeks.
Mr. President.
For not supporting you on this. Any repercussions? Well, no, I just think that it's not good for a partnership when they say what you're doing is a great thing, but we're not going to help. You know, they say what you did is a great thing, but we're not going to help.
The Iranian regime is told Sky News, if you put boots on the ground in Iran, it will be another Vietnam. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm not afraid of. I'm really not afraid of anything.
Are you rethinking the United States' relationship with NATO possibly getting out?
Well, I'm disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine. Ukraine would have been over in 1 day if we didn't help. Frankly, Ukraine would have been over in the first day. They had the best equipment in the world. It was our equipment, given by Sleepy Joe Biden. No charge, no charge. Hundreds of billions of dollars of the best equipment in the world, no charge. I will say that I'm not happy about it.
Mr. President, one on Iran and one on Cuba. Is Iran now a bigger foreign policy priority for you than China? And on Cuba, the Cuban government.
Iran is just a military operation to me. Iran is something that was essentially largely over in 2 or 3 days because the Navy was wiped out almost immediately. The Air Force came next. The anti-aircraft came next. I mean, we're flying over Iran. We could take out their electric capacity in 1 hour. We have there's nothing they can do right now because everything is knocked out. They have no radar, no anti-aircraft. They have nothing. And we don't, and it was a decision I made, we discussed it, Pete, Marco, JD, all of us, Chris, we discussed it. We can knock out their electricity in a matter of minutes if we wanted to. There's nothing they can do about it. We can knock out their oil in Carg Island. The only thing we didn't take out was their oil, because if we knock out, I call them the pipes, very complex. But if you do that, it'll take them forever to rebuild, meaning whoever, and hopefully it's a sane group of people, but whoever it is, it's gonna be running that, and we're gonna try to get people that are gonna run it well, and, you know, it's gonna be a prosperous, wonderful place. It used to be, you know, you go back, it used to be the people are great, the people are smart and energetic, and it used to be very successful. Now it's a country run by fear. It's a country where they tell protesters, don't go outside, because if you do, we're gonna kill you. Well, Cuba right now is in very bad shape, and they're talking to Marco, and we'll be doing something with Cuba very soon. We're really focused on this, but we're dealing with Cuba. Marco, you want to say a couple of words about it?
Yeah, I mean, Cuba has an economy that doesn't work and a political and governmental system that can't fix it. Yesterday's not dramatic enough, it's not gonna fix it. So they've got some big decisions to make over there.
But Secretary Rubio, do you support, and I know this is up to Congress, but do you support easing the Cuban trade embargo if you get more cooperation from them?
Well, I'm not gonna discuss what we would talk about or not. Suffice it to say that the embargo is tied to political change on the island. The law, the embargo is codified. And, but the bottom line is their economy doesn't work. It's a non-functional economy. It's an economy that has survived. That revolution, it's not even a revolution, that thing they have, has survived on subsidies from the Soviet Union and now from Venezuela. They don't get subsidies anymore, so they're in a lot of trouble. And the people in charge they don't know how to fix it. So they have to get new people in charge. That's what
And the relationship we have with Venezuela has been, I think you could almost say incredible. It's been really good. It's been good for Venezuela, and it's been good for us. And I congratulate the Venezuelan baseball team, because that was a big win, and I guess they play another game tonight in the finals. But this is the first time they've ever been in the finals, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
Around just the military operations, do you not have a day off to plan? And if so, what is the day off to plan for?
Well, we have a lot. Look, if we left right now, it would take 10 years for them to rebuild. But we're not ready to leave yet, but we'll be leaving in the near future. We'll be leaving in pretty much the very near future, but right now they've been decimated from every standpoint. And again, we've had great support from countries in the Middle East, great support.
If Trump is talking, oil is going up.
Essentially, no support from NATO.
What about your relationship with London? Has it been damaged by the fact that Keir Starmer isn't supporting you in this war? And has your opinion of Keir Starmer changed because of this?
Yes. Well, he hasn't been. No, they make a lot of money on trade with the United States. I went out of my, as you know, they couldn't make a deal with Biden because they had no real administration to make a deal, Biden. But we made a deal. We made a good deal for them, and frankly, probably wasn't appreciated. I do look forward to seeing the king. He's going to be coming, as you know, very shortly. But no, I was disappointed because Keir was willing to send 2 aircraft carriers after we won, because essentially there's no threat for the aircraft carriers right now. And I said, no, we want things sent before the war, not after the war is won. So yeah, I'm disappointed with Keir. I like him. I think he's a nice man, but I'm disappointed. You see that man right there? You know who that is? The late great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in his office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, you know, unfortunately, here is not Winston Churchill.
You got
Just make a number of points. First of all, I think, notwithstanding what has happened, the transatlantic relationship between Europe and the US is very, very important on a number of fronts. And I think we've had issues over the last year or two, but we settled them. And I think many of these leaders engaged with you, particularly on trade issues. Remember all the fuss last year, but we got a landing zone between Europe and US, and I think we can get a landing zone again. And I think I just met with Keir Starmer last week. The British-Irish relationship is a very important one. Churchill was a great wartime leader, although in Ireland there was kind of a different perspective in terms of during the War of Independence and so on. He created his own bit of difficulties for us, but that said, he was a great wartime leader. Keir Starmer has done a lot to reset the Irish-British relationship. I just want to put that on the record. But I do believe that he's a very earnest, sound person with whom you have a capacity to get on with. You've got on with him before, and you've got on with other European leaders as well. And I think you have that capacity again. And I think everyone exists. I mean, you cannot have a rogue state with a nuclear weapon or the capacity for a nuclear weapon. Iran was a sponsor of terrorism. We sanctioned Iran. All European countries did as a terror, and the IRGC in particular as a terrorist organization. They sponsored Hamas. They sponsored Hezbollah. The Houthis. They created mayhem, a most maligned force in the Middle East. The Irish position has always been ultimately, can we resolve this? Can we get peace? And obviously there's preconditions before we get to that situation. We had our own conflict, which went on for 13 years, and we learned a lot from that in terms of how to try and bring about peace. And I think I listened to you in terms of you're correct. I mean, our hearts go to the Iranian people who have been repressed and suppressed for so many years, culminating in that savage murder, thousands and thousands.
Exactly. The secular, educated part of the Iranian society wants freedom. Mearsheimer thinks that we shouldn't get involved. MTG thinks we shouldn't get involved. We shouldn't help people. And it's a win-win. They get a free country, and we have another geopolitical piece of the grand chessboard against China. Mearsheimer he knows better.
Solution of conflict. That's where we come from as a small nation. We've been peacekeepers all our lives. And we're the longest serving nation in terms of provision of peacekeeping forces in the world as it turns out. But we think ultimately all conflicts come to an end, and I think we have to try and work towards that end. And I'm sure European leaders and the US administration will engage, and hopefully we can get a landing zone.
I mean, the only thing, and I agree with everything you said, but we helped with Ukraine.
Yes.
And they don't help with Iran. And they all acknowledge that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. You yourself saying, these are horrendous people. These are the worst people, and
exactly
going back to Hitler.
They want to destroy Western culture. The Ayatollah wants to destroy Western culture. It's a battle of civilizations. So you can't be on the fence. You can't be America first and stay at home hiding under your bed. You got to get on the battlefield. You got to participate in the arena. You got to be on Team America. And oh, by the way, by knocking out the missiles and their radar systems and their defensive systems, we have proven to the Russians and the Chinese, your military equipment isn't at par with ours. So we again showed our military dominance through this Operation Epic Fury, telling China, hey, do you really want to go into Taiwan? Because it may be pretty bloody for you. But if you do what Mearsheimer wants, if you do what MTG wants, we wouldn't have been projecting that little warning shot to China. Another reason why Mearsheimer The neo-realist has no answers because he's the grand cynic.
And making the case to the British public as to why he should be supporting you. Could you do that now and talk to the UK, to Jimmy's viewers about why it's in their interest that we help you?
Well, because we have a tremendous long-term relationship with the UK. I mean, people would say it's the best. I don't want to get into that, but we've had, it was the longest, the oldest, should be the best. Always was the best until Keir came along, and now, and I like him, he's a nice man, he says everything beautiful, he's a very nice man with a beautiful family, everything's perfect, but he doesn't produce. And I think it's very inexpensive. I just said, you don't have to send me aircraft carriers, send me a couple of Minesweepers, we don't need your aircraft carriers. But even the aircraft carriers, he would only send them after we essentially won. I mean, he's sending them when there are no planes left. When the missiles are down to 8%, they have like 8% of the missiles, with the rest we demolish the missiles, and the factories, largely the factories are going even as we speak. They just hit another factory, and they have a lot of missile factories, they have a lot of drone factories, and so he's, wants to send them when we don't need them. But we'd like to have Minesweepers, because just in case, we don't know that there are any mines now, because we wiped out, I think, 24. They actually have, think of this for country, they have 24 boats that do nothing but put mines in the water. This doesn't sound like a great country. This doesn't sound like a friendly country, but we killed all of those boats. They're at the bottom of the sea. But so we don't even know if there are any mines there, but if there are, we'd like to have a little help in finding them, probably most importantly.
Would you like to change your mind? You have confidence in Keir Starmer, would you prepare to deal?
Well, it's not for me, it's really for the people of the UK to have confidence.
Of course, but is he
I've been very critical of Keir, and I did it in a friendly way. I said, if you don't change your energy thing and get away from windmills and go back to oil and gas, and you have something that's no other country has. Very few countries have anything like it, the North Sea. You have some of the greatest oil and oil deposits in the entire world, the North Sea. They don't use it. You buy a lot of your oil from Norway. You know where they get their oil? From the North Sea. And you pay and I tell them, and you have the better part of the North Sea. So why aren't they taking the oil from the North Sea? Why are they buying oil from Norway? But they have windmills all over the country, destroying those gorgeous Scottish fields and those beautiful fields, all over the windmills, which don't work. They're tremendously expensive. And the best testament to that is the windmills are made in China, but China doesn't use them. China uses coal. They're building 58 coal-fired plants right now, and that's up to them. But these foolish countries that are buying windmills, putting them out of business, I'm proudly telling you that we're going to try and have no windmills built in the United States during my They're very bad. They're very bad environmentally. They kill the birds. They're unsightly. They make a lot of noise. And for some reason, the environmentalists love windmills, okay?
He's a very nice man.
I think he's a nice man, but I disagree with him on two things primarily. His immigration policy is a disaster, and his energy policy is a disaster. And they're about the biggest policies you can have. You've allowed millions and millions and millions of people to come into your country that shouldn't be there. And by the way, that's all over Europe. Europe is a different place. It's a different place. And, I originate, to put it nicely, many of us do, from Europe. I love Europe. I've spent a lot of time in Europe. It's a different place. Bad things have happened to Europe. Very bad things. And you better do something about immigration, and you better do something about energy, or you won't have a Europe. It won't be, I don't believe, too long. We're knocking the hell out of the coast. It's basically the coast and the water. And it won't be too long. And the Middle Eastern states, including Israel, by the way, who has been terrific. The Middle Eastern states have been helping us a lot. Well, I think the people in Ireland are very happy that I'm getting rid of, I have a lot of friends from Ireland, they're very happy that I'm getting rid of a nuclear power, a nuclear terrorist. And as soon as that war's over, which will be soon, your prices are gonna drop like a rock. You watch.
What do you think about our president's comments about his breaking international law? What do you think about our president's comments?
Can you speak? You're speaking right into your phone.
Mr. President, how do you respond to the accusation groups against the U.S. Embassy and consulate in Larijani?
You want to answer that?
Yeah.
You want to?
Yeah. Obviously, Secretary of State has control over the embassy. Look, there have been a lot of militia attacks against our base or our embassy in Iran. I think Marco's done a good job of limiting the number of people who are at that embassy so we can provide essential functions, but also protect our people. But it goes to show there are a lot of terrorists in that region of the world, and we've got to eliminate when we find them.
And you can't give them nuclear weapons. You can give them rifles, you can give them guns, you can't give them nuclear weapons. I think we agree for very strongly. Yes, excuse me.
Just first of all, I will say that Europe is still a very good place to live in.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
And our view is you have to have robust and fair rules around migration. But on the other hand, a lot of people, within the European Union, we have free mobility of people. And in Ireland, our population is growing, but in a very positive way. Our economy is going well because we're attracting a lot of people from Europe and beyond into work, legally and validly in our country. In fact, I'd love if we could develop a legal pathway between the US and Ireland in the future because of our history and so on like that, that we could have a legal pathway because no one is in favor of illegal migration or and so forth. So you have to have robust rules for that. But fundamentally, I think sometimes Europe gets characterized wrongly in terms of it being overrun or whatever like that. It's much more robust now, much more stronger mechanism in place to facilitate legal migration. And I think it's important that understanding. So we need more economic growth in Europe. It doesn't have the same focus on innovation that you do here in the US. Discussed that earlier by the President in terms of technology, in terms of AI. We pivot more to innovation as opposed to regulation. And I think investing in people, and that's the key to, I think, our collective future. We do take our lessons.
Prime Minister, Mr. President, our President has said that your war against Iran is illegal, it's an attack on international law.
Who said that?
The Irish President.
Look, he's lucky I exist. That's all I can say. Because if you're going to allow countries that are sick and demented, and they are demented, to have nuclear weapons, everybody in the whole world should be very thankful. And I'm disappointed in NATO, very disappointed. I'm disappointed in a couple of other countries too. But they should be very thankful that this group of people feels the way we do. Because if a country like Iran was allowed to have the power of a nuclear weapon, if we didn't stop them, I stopped them twice. I stopped them my first term when I terminated the Iran nuclear deal, which was Barack Obama's deal. It was maybe the worst deal I've ever seen. It gave everything to Iran, including billions of dollars in green cash. I don't mean cash, I mean green cash flown over by airplanes. I can't to this day believe that was allowed to happen. And come to think of it, it would be a good thing for somebody to look at. Does the president have the power to hand hundreds of millions of dollars of cash to terrorists? But it began with that, and I terminated that deal. If I didn't terminate that deal, we might not be here right now. If I didn't terminate that deal, unbelievable nuclear holocaust would have taken place. And then I did it a second time when we hit them with the B-2 bombers, and we totally obliterated their potential nuclear weapon that they would have had in less than 1 month. They think 2 weeks, but in less than 1 month. And it would have been, I believe it would have been a much different world than it is right now. We want to go to lunch, so maybe we'll take one more nice one.
Can I ask you how you're doing with your legal case against BBC and their fake news documentary?
Well, BBC was incredible. What they did is they had me speaking something I never said. And I've never seen anything quite like it. You know, CBS had that. We had the situation on 60 Minutes, and not the current owners, the past owners. The current owners, I think, are good, Allison. But BBC took it a step further. They actually they put words in my mouth, and I said some pretty bad things. And I didn't say them. It was AI generated. And I said, I never said that. In fact, some of my people said, wow, that was pretty bad stuff you said. I said, what did I say? You know, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I mean, if you can go through years of these press conferences and you're a popular president of the United States that won in a landslide, that won all 7 swing states, that got record numbers of votes. I mean, so I guess I'm okay at this stuff. I said, I never said that. And then we found out it was AI generated. And they admit they made a mistake. BBC. But I watched them this morning for some crazy reason, and it was so inaccurate. The reporting of the war was unbelievable. We have decimated that country. And if you watch BBC, it's almost like they're fighting us to a draw. They're not fighting us to a draw. It was very inaccurate news. It was fake news. So I'm very proud of the term fake news because it was my term. I came up with it, but it's no longer accurate. It really is. It's corrupt fraudulent news. It really is. It's fraudulent. It's not just fake. It's beyond fake. It's really criminal what they did. I watched BBC this morning, and I don't know much about BBC other than what took place, because people were calling me saying, that was a terrible thing you said. I said, what did I say? And I said, I never said that. And we checked it. You agree? They agree.
You've been listening to President Trump at an event at the White House with the Irish Prime Minister. He's been addressing the reluctance of...
All right, so we're going to go back to Mearsheimer and how he's America first. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. This has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label in detail on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This will help to slow down the aging process and increase your longevity. It focuses on different systems. It helps to bring down inflammation. It helps your endocrine system and your immune system, your brain function, your cardiovascular health. It also will improve your metabolism and your energy production. And by bringing down inflammation, not only is it helping your immune system, but it's also helping with your joints. And you're going to be able to control your A1C levels, your blood glucose levels, really important, and build musculature. This is a great supplement to be taking every day. You will start to feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You take this regularly, and you're going to slow down the aging process. And you're going to have more vitality. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be just more active. Another great supplement that you can take separately or stack it with the Boomer Boost is the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. By taking this every day, you're going to be able to improve your immune system. You're going to improve your endocrine system. You're going to improve your brain function. You're going to improve your cardiovascular health. Why? By bringing down inflammation, you're reducing stress in different tissues. So if you're reducing the stress and the inflammation at the neuron level, the neurons are going to be healthier. When you're soaking up free radicals, you're helping the health of the mitochondria so you have more energy. So please go to my store, get the heirloom barley. And again, you can take it separately or you can stack it with the Boomer Boost, which is what I recommend. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Get this stack and use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off. All right, let's go back to the neo-realist Mearsheimer, who doesn't have an answer for anything because he's the grand cynic.
know that. These are basically very smart people who are in charge of the major organizations, and even the individuals who wield influence pretty much on their own are very smart. And they have to know that we and the Israelis have gotten ourselves into a real hole. And all we're really doing is digging here. And what's becoming clear is that this is a war for Israel. That we had no interest, no national interest in going to war against Iran. And there's just a ton of evidence that President Trump was dragged into this war by Israel and Israeli supporters.
This is a classic example where you just blame Israel for everything. Why doesn't, and he knows this, he's ex-military. He has a Ph.D. in political science. He knows a lot about international affairs. He's well versed in this. Why doesn't he say that being able to take control of the oil flows, if we have a country that's more aligned with the United States, if we have a country like Iran that's aligned with the United States, we have more leverage against China. Come on, Mearsheimer. Come on. Come on. It's not hard to say. So because he doesn't say it, it's not that he doesn't know it. He has a different agenda. Now, what's that agenda?
States. And that's one part of the story. But the other part of the story is that the war is going very badly. And hardly anyone I know can see how we come out of this winning. So if Israel is seen to be responsible for pulling us into a losing war, this will be, I think, disastrous for the lobby.
How would you even define winning?
Absolutely perfection.
Hands down, the best show I've ever seen.
I almost cried like 8 times.
I don't think anybody.
Now, I know that everyone has goldfish memory, but if you just roll back to some of the older podcasts that Mearsheimer was on with Judge Politano, the guy that's telling you to buy gold and silver because of chaos geopolitically, all right? He said that Israel was losing. He said the same bullshit that Scott Ritter said. And guess what? Hamas and Hezbollah are decimated. And the project for a greater Israel is even more higher probability now. Does that sound like a losing strategy? Mearsheimer? Huh? So if he got Israel wrong with thinking that Hamas was going to, drag Israel into some sort of Vietnam, their version of Vietnam, Gaza's gone. It's a parking lot now. It's totally decimated. There's nothing left. Nothing. He got that wrong. What about Hezbollah? He got that wrong. What about Syria? Got that wrong. So maybe he's going to get his take on Iran wrong too? I think so. Who's right? Who's going to play out to be the victor in this in terms of prediction? Dr. Paul Cottrell or Dr. Mearsheimer? Dr. Paul Cottrell is 100% right on this one. Top 3 in terms of international affairs and political science. And guess what? Can't get modern events correct. With that stupid face.
War like this.
Winning the war, as I always say, is largely a function of whether or not you achieve the objectives that you set out before the war started. People like to focus on battles and the assassination of this person or that person, but the key question is, what are your objectives, and are you likely to achieve those objectives? And almost everybody agrees it's almost impossible to see how we're going to get regime change, how we're going to get Iran to give up its nuclear enrichment capability, its ballistic missiles, and its support for the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. How do we do that? Nobody can tell a story how we achieve those particular ends. And if you can't tell a story like that, you don't win the war.
I just wonder what kind of advice the president got if he's surrounded by yes men. There was that article, we talked about this in the Washington Post, very lengthy, very detailed, classic venue for the CIA and military people to leak information claiming that General Kane warned the president about these very things that are happening now. And the president wrote that, it's not true, it's not true, it's not true. Nobody believes him when he says these things. But they obviously, the people around the president, grossly miscalculated the resilience of the Iranian people, the strength of the Iranian government, and the asymmetrical nature of the Iranian military response.
I think you have to be very careful when you talk about the people around him. I actually think in this case, the deep state, for lack of a better phrase, told him what was going to happen. It's now
No, the bigger question is why did Judge Palatano say the Iranian people and how strong they are against the big bad wolf, the greater Satan, aka Team USA? Why did Judge Palatano say that? Isn't he aware that there's a large secular part of that society that's educated, that's being held down by the theocratic regime? Come on. I mean, it's well known. All you got to do is use Grok or ChatGPT. You don't even have to think.
From press reports that he was told that the Iranians would shut the Strait of Hormuz. He was told that. And he just ignored it because he thought we would win a quick and easy victory or a quick and decisive victory. So that would never become an issue, that meaning the shutting down of the strait. So he was getting, I believe, good advice from General Kane. General Kane was telling him that we did not have a serious military option here. The National Intelligence Council was telling him the same. The problem is that Benjamin Netanyahu and a handful of people who are profoundly tied to Israel, and this would include Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, had enormous influence on President Trump. And he listened to Netanyahu, he listened to Kushner, he listened to Witkoff, and he ignored the deep state here. And we went into this. And we went into this war without clear objectives, without a clear plan. And when you do that, and you're dealing with an adversary that has a rich history of fighting against Israel and its ally, the United States, and has learned a lot over time about how to wage that war, you're asking for serious trouble. And that's the situation we're in now.
How is this war viewed in the Kremlin, in your view, Professor Mearsheimer?
Oh, I think this is wonderful news for the Kremlin. They're the big winner in this one. First of all,
they get more oil price. They get more price for their oil.
Gas, and oil prices. Because of this war, it's very important to understand that the administration has a vested interest in allowing as much oil as possible to get out into the market. Most people don't understand this, but Iranian oil is being exported around the world in the same amounts that it was being exported around the world before the war started. You just want to understand that. Iranian oil is flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. Just It's the Gulf states that can't get the oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran can. And why is the administration allowing Iran to sell its oil around the world, send its oil to China and to India? Because we need as much oil as possible out on the international market so that the price of oil doesn't go too high.
Right.
Same basic logic applies with regard to Russia. President Trump basically took most of the sanctions off of Russian oil because he wants Russian oil to flow out into the international market so that prices stay as low as possible. So Russia is a huge winner in this regard. And Iran, as I pointed out, is in an excellent position to continue the war because it's not being economically throttled. Okay, back to Russia. Not only did they get relief from these sanctions, what this also means is that we don't have weaponry that we can give to Ukraine because we're using it up in the Middle East. So what's happening here is that the prospects that Ukraine will lose on the battlefield and that Russia will come out of this smelling like a rose is going up because of the Ukraine war. It's really quite remarkable what's happening here. And just one other point that I believe I've made before on the show is that you want to understand that we consider our principal goal to be containing China and East Asia. But what we're doing is weakening our forces in East Asia to deal with this war against Iran. We are not pivoting to Asia. We are pivoting away from Asia because of this crazy war against Iran.
Wow. I'm going to ask you about China in a minute, but basically what you have just described.
We moved our military assets to the Middle East that were normally in Asia, that's true. But by controlling the oil supply and having a government that's more aligned to the United States, that is pivoting to Asia because you're controlling a major oil supplier to China. Hello, Dr. Mearsheimer. I know you're getting older, but it's time. It's time to get on Team USA. All right. I mean, it's not hard. Just all you got to do is just Team USA.
Economics 101. Now, wouldn't Scott Bessent or the Secretary of the Treasury or someone in Trump's orbit have explained this to him? You realize what's going to happen? You're going to add a lot of...
See, this is a classic example of short-term pain for long-term solution can't be had because you have short-sightedness by Judge Polentano and the rest of America and the America First policies. Team USA isn't necessarily America First because America First policy is kind of a misnomer. America First, it means be a pacifist. That's what it means. For most people that are aligned with that kind of thing. So, wait a minute, Judge Polentano. A president assesses the risks. It is his prerogative to decide which path to take based on what he thinks, based on his life experience, based on domestic and international landscapes, what his advisors are doing, and makes a determination. It is the president's prerogative to go against his advisors. Hell, if you pay attention to Judge Polentano, if JFK took the advice of Judge Polentano during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we wouldn't have had a de-escalation. We would have had nuclear exchange with Russia, with the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know why? Because most of the generals wanted to hit with nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union, all right? And the Soviet Union was trying to find some sort of off-ramp. Thank God that JFK and RFK had back channels talking to the Soviet Union to try to de-escalate it. But our generals wanted nuclear war in 1961. Or was it 2? And then the Cuban Missile Crisis was 61, I think it was. So maybe having a president that doesn't pay attention to all of his advisors, but listens, makes his own assessment of the landscape and makes a determination, is more prudent than just being a puppet to the advisors. Judge, you're an educated individual. You should know better. Mearsheimer, come on. You're in the big 3 with Kissinger and Brzezinski, and both of them fucked up the world.
To Putin's treasury, because he's going to be selling more oil and he's going to be selling it at a higher price. And all your blue-collar MAGA guys, when they go to fill up their pickup trucks, I say, why am I paying $4 and $5 a gallon for gas? I didn't fight this war. It has nothing to do with me.
Stupid. Stupid. This is a stupid argument. What do you think will happen to Americans' prosperity when we do not have freedom of navigation through the 9-dash line? What do you think that will happen, Judge? I know you'll be dead by that time. But the thing is that the United States cannot lose our hegemonic power in the Pacific. And what is happening with the Middle East is causing consternation with China. So when you're just looking at it from, well, I'm putting more money in my gas tank because the oil prices are high because we're fighting a war in Iran for Israel. What do you think that same guy will say when he doesn't have a job and the stock market crashes and we literally lose our empire that catapulted us into the situation that we're in now after World War II? What happens when we lose that? Judge Politano, the know-it-all. What are you going to do? What are you going to do then? Maybe you should take a lesson with what Jefferson did, not said, when he was president. And that was he used force. He used force. Wake up, Judge. Learn your history. Come on. Come on.
The key point here that's essential to keep in mind is that President Trump thought that he was going to win a quick and decisive victory. He did not think that we would end up in a long war. And therefore, he didn't pay any attention to these problems. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about...
I think he did pay attention to the problems. It's just that he looked at the risk area, the risk landscape, and decided to move. Now, did we have to expedite our operations because of what Israel was doing at the same time? Probably. That's what Rubio seemed to be suggesting. But the bottom line is this. Actually, the war is doing pretty well. This was published 3 hours ago. So it was probably recorded yesterday, all right? With Mearsheimer and Politano. WTI is trading at $95 a barrel. Now, what they're saying is so catastrophic and all this, WTI should be trading at 102, 103, 105. Why is it? Why? The energy markets are telling you where this is going. And it's not up, it's down. That means that Trump is actually slowly succeeding in this. Now, did he think it was going to be taking as long to have the IRGC collapse? Probably. But that's the fog of war. That's you don't know what happens. And all of these dominoes that start to fall and how the new landscape changes. It's a dynamic situation. So anyone says, oh, let's not go in. That's just a pacifist. I'm afraid of it. And you got these Monday morning or Tuesday morning quarterbacks telling how they would do it if they were the president of the United States. Well, thank God that Judge Palatano is not the president of the United States. And thank God that Mearsheimer isn't part of the National Security Advisory Group. So, are the energy markets wrong? It's trading at 95. Now, is it elevated from the 80s or the 70s? Yeah, of course it is. But instead of whining, short oil and wait it out and make a lot of money. Instead of being a whiner like fucking Mearsheimer. Don't bet against America, I'm telling you. She will always surprise you. You know why? You know why? Because America, for some, and I know this is going to sound, America's exceptional, but it is. The United States has a blessing. And as long as we maintain that blessing, we will be fine. Now, Trump is a blessed individual, more blessed than you'll ever be. Is he an intellectual? No. Does he have a lot of faults? Yeah. But he's blessed. Do you really want to bet against a person that's blessed? Sometimes being lucky is a lot better than being good.
Seeing the Strait of Hormuz. He was told that the Iranians were likely to close the strait. He ignored that warning because he thought we would finish them off. It would either be a decapitation strategy that brought Iran to its knees, or it would be shock and awe, or it would be a rapid punishment campaign. But this war, in President Trump's mind and in Prime Minister Netanyahu's mind, was not going to go on and on. It was going to be a quick and decisive victory. So all these issues that you're now raising were ignored or not even addressed.
Well, how is the Financial Times reports that Russian oil companies are collecting $150 billion a day over what they had been collecting during the sanctions period as a result of the increase in the price of.
Okay, so why don't you be a little Russian and buy into the energy markets? Now, I recommend that you short energy, especially WTI, because when this war ends, it's going back down to $60 a barrel.
That is extraordinary. I'm not familiar with the Russian tax scheme, but somehow that has to be contributing marvelously to the Kremlin's treasury.
I think that's 150 million. I'm not absolutely sure.
Sounds more reasonable that it would be 150 million. It's still a lot of money, $150 million a day.
There's absolutely no question about this. This war is a real boon for the Russians. It's really quite remarkable. I mean, if you begin to assess what's happened here, this war is catastrophic on so many dimensions. Just take the Europeans. Our relations with the Europeans were terrible before the war, but now they're worse than ever. President Trump wanted the Europeans to send naval forces to help the Americans crash through the Strait of Hormuz. And they refused. And if you look at how the Germans have reacted, it's really quite remarkable how hard-nosed that they have been with us. The Minister of Defense said, "This is not our war." Friedrich Merz, who is the German chancellor and usually dances to President Trump's tune, said that NATO is a defensive alliance. It's not an interventionist alliance.
Wow.
As such, NATO has no role whatsoever to play in this war. Really remarkable. And it's true of countries all over the world who are our allies. They have refused to come into the fight. The Japanese, the South Koreans, the French, the British, and so forth and so on. And by the way, that's in large part because they understand this is a lost cause. They don't want to enter a war that is going to be lost by us.
No,
Here's
no,
a very
no.
recent clip.
One, they're pacifists. And two, they have huge immigration flows from the Middle East into Europe. So they're worried about domestic instability, terrorism. See, they've already been taken over. The caliphate has already started to grow roots in Europe. And the Europeans, Western civilization, didn't want to prevent it. And now, they're weak. They're weak. The Europeans are weak. That's why.
From President Trump, first lamenting that the United Kingdom won't help, and then saying, we don't need them. It's typical Trumpian. Chris?
If we ever needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known.
Struggling to find finance and accounting talent? Join the growing number of companies embracing outsourced finance and accounting.
They won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time. We have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming already. This is a need. Need would be one of the big boys. If we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of the situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us. We want them to come and help us with the strait. My attitude is, we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them.
Where is he on this? I guess maybe he's lamenting the inevitable. That,
No. He talks New York, all right? You know, and you got to understand, you got to interpret the New York talk, all right? What Trump is basically saying is that we have the strongest military. We don't absolutely need them to help us. We can go it alone. But if they do help, it's going to speed up the process to open up the straits. That's what Trump is saying. But, you know, the educated elite, Judge Napolitano and Professor Mearsheimer, know better.
Their Starmer has basically said to him, this is Israel's war, it's not ours.
Well, the problem is he's desperate here. Right? He knows he has to open the strait and that he has to get oil from the Gulf states flowing back into the international oil.
Right.
He just
Right. And the signal from the energy markets is that oil is trading down from the peak of this crisis. It's trading at 95, almost $94 handle. It's at 95.05 right now, right at this moment in time. If they were right, oil would be trading higher. Now, why is that? Because there is a intelligence within financial markets. There is the information is digested and supply and demand. Yes, there's behavioral finance involved, behavioral dynamics, but It's digesting the information and it's responding. And it's saying, don't worry. This thing is actually in the near term, because you got to look at the oil markets in terms of futures. And the next contract, the May contract, is showing that it's not going to spike. Now, things could change, new information, but if everything stays the same, oil is going to go down. So the energy markets and the intelligence of the futures market is stating the opposite of what Mearsheimer is saying. Now, which one do you think is probably higher probability to take hold? What the future market is doing, or what this neo-realist cynic is saying? Trust me, the financial markets know more.
He has to do that, but he has no way of opening the strait. You want to remember, the United States Navy is by far, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, it is by far the most powerful Navy in the world. And we have a huge chunk of that Navy in the Middle East, 2 carrier battle groups, for example. But we can't force our way through the Strait of Hormuz with that incredibly powerful Navy. So he goes out and he asks these other countries to send naval forces to help us. They don't have significant naval forces. None of these countries do. And even if they take what they have and they send those naval forces to the Middle East, and we launch a joint operation on the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to fail. It's not going to work. And that's why we alone have not tried to force our way through the Strait of Hormuz. You just can't do it. And the truth is, even if you can force your way through the Strait of Hormuz, it doesn't solve the problem. Because once you're in the Persian Gulf, it's a rich target environment for Iranian cruise missiles, Iranian drones, and Iranian ballistic missiles that can target any ships that are in the Persian Gulf. And furthermore, the Iranians always have the option of just destroying the oil refineries, the oil installations of the Gulf states. So even if the straits are open, there's no oil to go through them. The Iranians hold almost all the cards here, and it's hard to see how we can solve this problem, how President Trump, who's got himself into this war and got us into the war in the process, can figure out how to get out of it. There's just no way that anyone can see at this point in time to fix this problem.
How is this war viewed in
Non sarà un'avventura.
How is this war viewed in Beijing?
Well, I think that the Chinese are glad to see the United States shooting itself in the foot. This is going to increase Chinese influence not only in the Gulf in significant ways, but all around the world. If you ask yourself which country on the planet among the 3 great powers, the Chinese, the Russians, and the United States, looks like the responsible stakeholder in the system, and who looks like they are the least responsible, it's clearly the Americans who look the least responsible. States all over the world look at us and scratch their head and think we have lost their mind. And it's easy to understand why that's the case. The Chinese look like they're responsible stakeholders. And indeed, the Russians look this.
Responsible stakeholders? Mearsheimer, they surrounded, with their military operations, the island of Taiwan. Just recently, within, 48 hours ago. Really? Responsible? What about the Uyghurs? Responsible citizens of the international community? Really? Okay. See, this guy sounds like he's, for China. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. Omega-3 helps to bring down inflammation and helps you to control your lipid profile. This is super important to help to improve your cardiovascular health. It helps to reduce plaque formation. Really important to take every day. Heart disease is one of the largest problems in the United States. The second largest problem is bullshit artists like Mearsheimer. Resveratrol. Resveratrol helps to slow down the aging process. And you would say, how? It's simple. It soaks up free radicals and improves the health of the mitochondria so you have more energy. When you get older, you lose energy because your mitochondria is not as healthy. This helps it. This helps the mitochondria build more ATP so you have more energy. Resveratrol also helps with youthful gene expression, and it helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Because if you have cells that are in senescence, they're just sitting there, they're collecting garbage, and so your tissues just continue to collect garbage, especially lipofuscin. You don't want that. That's bad. You get rid of those cells, guess what? You have healthier tissues. So take resveratrol, slow down the aging process. This stacks well with C60 and the Boomer Boost. Resveratrol also helps the basal layer of your skin. That's where your new skin cells are generated. So it's really important to keep the basal layers healthy. And by having a good basal layer, you look younger. How amazing how that works. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol. Stack it with the C60, the Boomer Boost, even with the omega-3. Because what this stack does is it's getting youthful gene expression, building up your energy levels, getting rid of cells that are in senescence, and controlling your lipid profile, bringing down inflammation. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol and the omega-3. Make sure you use discount 5 to save some money. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Let's go back to Mearsheimer.
So we have done enormous damage to our diplomatic position around the world, which is to China's interest. We've done damage to our situation or our position in Europe and with the Gulf states, and this is going to work to China's advantage. So this war is just terrible news.
Did the Chinese cancel Trump's trip, or did he cancel it?
I think it's quite clear that he canceled it. And I think he at first looked like he was going to use the threat of canceling the trip to get the Chinese to send naval forces or even ground troops to the Gulf to help the United States. This was a laughable proposition. But then I think he came to realize quite correctly that given that there's a war going on and that he is losing that war, the last thing he can be seen to do is go to China, which in effect would be taking his eye off the ball. And furthermore, it would be a rather nice and jovial meeting between the two leaders where there would be lots of handshakes and lots of smiling. And that would not look good given how events in the Middle East are going.
Going back to Israel, is there a danger if the Israeli government's back is to the wall that they'll use nuclear weapons on Tehran?
I think that possibility only arises if there's evidence that Iran is developing nuclear weapons, which is not the case at the moment. I think that once this war is over with, the incentives for Iran to get nuclear weapons would be very great. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they went down that road. And if the Israelis even suspect that that's the case, and they don't have the IAEA inside of Iran inspecting what the Iranians are doing, I would imagine the Israelis will come up with some worst case scenarios regarding the development of an Iranian bomb. And I think in that circumstance, they may think about using nuclear weapons in a very serious way. I mean, it's quite clear that the Israelis have convinced themselves that Iran is an existential threat. I think for many Israelis, Iran is not much different than Nazi Germany.
Wait. Iran is no different than Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was an existential threat to the French. Nazi Germany was an existential threat to England. What? I mean, what planet is Mearsheimer on?
They believe that if Iran has an opportunity, it will implement a second Holocaust. I think this is ridiculous, but what I think doesn't matter. It's what they think that matters. And these are paranoid people, and if they lose this war, that'll just exacerbate their paranoia. And again, if they think Iran is developing a nuclear weapon, which it will use against Israel, they'll use, I believe, nuclear weapons to excise the problem.
From the Iranian perspective, as Ambassador Freeman just pointed out here about an hour ago, when you don't have the law to protect you, when public heads of states fully recognize that treaties don't bind them, their own constitutions don't bind them, international law doesn't bind them, maybe a nuclear weapon would scare them away. The craziest person in the world that has a nuclear weapon doesn't get attacked. That character in North Korea.
Absolutely, I agree with Chaz completely. And I would make another point just about, international law and what the Israelis and the Americans have done to destroy it. And not only to destroy international law and international institutions, but to do great damage to diplomacy. Diplomacy has been used as a cover twice now to attack Iran. What kind of faith can the Iranians have in diplomacy, much less international law? Now, the reason this really matters that you want to pay attention to is it's related to the question of how do we shut down this war? It's quite clear that there's going to have to be sanctions relief and maybe some reparations, but at least significant sanctions relief to get the Iranians to end the war. But also, the Iranians are not going to end the war unless they can get some sort of guarantee that the United States and Israel won't pay a return visit. They won't come back and attack them. Remember, there was a war last June, and here we are in March, and there's another war, right, in less than a year's time. Who's to say if the war ends now that in less than a year's time, the Israelis and the Americans won't attack Iran again? So the Iranians are going to want some sort of guarantee that that won't happen. And in a world where international law has gone out the window and diplomacy has gone out the window, and you can't trust the Israelis or the Americans as far as you can throw them, please tell me how you work out a diplomatic solution to this war.
Wait a minute. Mearsheimer, you are an American, so you just basically told Polentano's audience not to trust you.
Convince the Iranians that you won't pay them a return visit. So all of this behavior on the part of the Israelis and the Americans is just making it incredibly difficult to figure out how you shut this war down in the end.
Wow.
With custom homes, breathtaking sights, and neighbors from across the country, Highland Green is the best move you'll ever make.
With Canva AI, you'll never design alone again. Just tag in Canva for instant design feedback and suggestions, all from within.
Well, here's President Trump using decidedly unpronounceably undiplomatic language, referring to aspects of the war as fun. Chris?
Together with our Israeli partners, we're crushing the enemy in an overwhelming display of technical skill and military force. Iran's drone and missile capability is being utterly demolished. The Navy is gone. It's all lying at the bottom of the ocean. 46 ships. Can you believe it? In fact, I got a little upset with our people. I said, what quality of ship? Excellent, sir. Top of the line. I said, why didn't we just capture the ship? We're going to use it. Why didn't we sink them? He said, it's more fun to sink them. I said, that's right. They like sinking them better. They say it's safer to sink them. I guess it's probably true.
That's just one comment he's made using the word fun. He's made another comment where he said regarding the bombing of Karg Island, after he said that he had basically destroyed all the military installations on Karg Island, he would bomb it again just for the fun of it. These are the sorts of reprehensible statements that no leader of a civilized country should make. I mean, war is a deadly serious business. Huge numbers of people are killed and wounded in these enterprises. You have to enter a war, after trying every way possible to avoid it. And then when you go to war, you have to be very careful not to kill civilians and not to talk the way President Trump does. But he talks in the most cavalier way about war, as if this were just fun, that, bombing and killing Iranians is fun. I can't imagine any other president we have ever had making statements like that. Can you imagine Abraham Lincoln saying something like that, or FDR? Even, Dick Nixon, George W. Bush. I can't even imagine George W. Bush making statements like that. These are all people who understood what a deadly serious business war is, and how cavalier statements of this sort are just totally irresponsible.
So you have cavalier statements like this. You have rules of engagement are stupid out of the mouth of the Secretary of Defense, who calls himself the Secretary of War. Is it any wonder we bombed a girls' school and incinerated 170 little girls and their teachers?
No, and it's very important to understand that militaries are giant killing machines. They're giant killing machines, and when you take a military to war, you send a military to fight a war, there's a very powerful tendency in that military to use every means possible to annihilate the adversary, to inflict massive pain on the adversary. It's sort of a built-in impulse. And what you have to do is you have to go to great lengths to curb that impulse in particular situations. If you're talking about two armies crashing into each other on the battlefield, there's obviously no limits to killing soldiers on each side. It's the name of the game. We all understand that. But then there's the whole issue of collateral damage and the whole issue of whether you directly attack civilians. And what you try to do when you go to war, if you're a civilized nation, is you try to go to great lengths to kill as few civilians as possible. And you don't want to have a lot of collateral damage if you can avoid it. And furthermore, you definitely don't want to directly target civilians and murder large numbers of civilians. And that's why you have international law, and that's why people in the American military actually pay a lot of attention to the whole concept of just war theory. They think long and hard about what you can and can't do when you engage in combat, and that's all for the good. This is not to deny for 1 second that there are significant limits on a country's ability to curb the killing of civilians or the killing of innocents once a war starts. It's a really difficult task to put limits on these giant killing machines. But still work very hard to do that. It's the right thing to do. But if you listen to somebody like Pete Hegseth talk, it's like he's thrilled at the fact that we're just going to go in there and, kill anybody that gets in our way and smash things and not pay attention to the laws of war. The laws of war are just a giant encumbrance. They prevent us from winning. What we have to do is just do whatever we think is necessary. And if that involves killing massive numbers of civilians, so be it.
Well, Professor Mearsheimer, thank you very much. As always, your time and analysis is invaluable to us. And congratulations again on that ground-breaking book, The Israel Lobby and U.S.
He's right about the Israeli lobby, it's a problem. But all lobbying groups are a problem. The big agricultural lobby group is a major problem in the United States, and your affordability at the grocery store. So if you're going to pay attention to the whole America First agenda, why isn't it MTG talking about big ag? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to help to build muscle and to maintain muscle. This prevents atrophy. This is very important to take if you're 40 years of age, male or female, to maintain muscle and to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take Myotrol. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to be able to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Super important to take. If you have joint pain, arthritis, or even a sports injury, take collagen. Collagen will help to remodel the joint. So if you have a problem with your shoulder or elbow or hip, or even with your hands, it's important to take. Take it every day. And what this will do is help to remodel the joint by using type 2 collagen to remodel the cartilage, ACAN to help with the cushioning. It will also block enzymes that reduce the erosion of the joint. So it's going to block those enzymes that are eroding the joint, all right? Those enzymes are MMP3 and MMP13. Collagen also inhibits Ep4, which causes pain in the joint. So it's blocking the pain, a pain pathway, but also is blocking additional erosion. So it allows time for your joint to heal. And collagen will help to recruit glucosamine to remodel the cartilage and recruit chondroitin, and chondroitin will help with the cushioning. So you're remodeling the cushioning, you're remodeling the cartilage, you're blocking the pain, and you're also reducing the erosion of the joint called joint rust. All right. So this is really important if you had a problem with sports or if you're just getting older. And also a trick, you take this every day, but another trick is to stack it with the collagen powder that I have. And also, let's say if you have a problem with your wrist, right? Let's say you have some arthritis in your wrist and you want to remodel your wrist joints. Taking the collagen and the collagen, and then depending on what your pain is, you may have pain for extension. So you may have pain for extension. And there's flexing and extending. So let's say your pain is extension. So let's say you have no pain this way, but you may have pain when you do 90 degrees. All right. So what you might want to do is get to the point where you have the pain and then move a little bit more, maybe another 10 degrees, 10 degrees, and count to 20 seconds. All right. And then release and then do it again. Count to 20 and then release. And do that twice a day or so. And over time, you're going to be able to be more flexible, right? Because you want to remodel the musculature, you want to remodel the tendons and ligaments, and also the actual cartilage and the cushioning of the joint. So you want to stretch it out a little bit. And then over time, for you know, for example, if it was an elbow, and once you are able to fix that problem over time, you can add light weights and slowly strengthen it. And you're also taking the collagen and the collagen, and you're slowly rebuilding the joint. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, especially if it's something that you've had a problem with for years. But if you're diligent with it and you're consistent, you're going to be able to remodel the joints. So please go to my store, get the collagen, stack with the collagen for a synergistic stacking, but also do those exercises that I just mentioned. It's important to get to the point and then go a little bit beyond, just a little bit. And then over time, you're going to notice that you can go farther and farther in terms of flexibility of the joint. Please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in MCT, coconut oil, avocado oil, and also extra virgin olive oil. Take a teaspoon a day every day. This is going to soak up free radicals. And by doing that, you're reducing stress in tissues and in your cell. You're improving the health of the mitochondria, so you're going to have more energy and more ATP. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And by soaking up free radicals and bringing down stress in the neuron, your neurons will be healthier. You'll have better positive neuroplasticity. Your dendritic connections will improve, so you're going to be able to think faster and have better memory. You're going to slow down the aging process, and C60 helps with the basal layer to improve your skin. So take this every day. I've been using C60, a teaspoon a day, every day, since 2016. It's very important to take. Now, it stacks well with resveratrol, boomer boost, lignans, ashwagandha root, turmeric, even the max 35 or cleanse. So please go to my store and get the C60. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And you're helping support the work that I do. All these videos that I do are for free. I want you to learn about my perspective on the news, on the financial markets, how you can benefit from the news, and also how to improve your health and wellness. So it's a win-win. If you purchase the products, you're helping the channel, and you're also helping your health and wellness. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.